Good afternoon. Hello. Good day, everyone. Welcome to the BCV broadcast. I am your host, as you can see, SaikoWoods, and glad to have you here. I'm going to wait a few moments for those who are getting started, coming into the chat. Facebook fam, YouTube family. Let me make sure that you all are getting in here. Let me go ahead and change my settings here. Sometimes my mobile device here does not connect the live on Facebook, so make sure I get that taken care of for you all. So we can get this thing on and popping here. Let's see. Get that going. Make sure this is good. And we should be getting people in right now as we speak, coming into the Facebook chat. People don't want to be missing that. Like, I don't want to miss the live. I don't want to miss the live. Okay, hold on. We coming. We getting you. We getting you. All right. Making sure you good. Let's see. Okay. Should be good to go. Let's see. Where they at, y'all? Where they at, y'all? You don't know nothing about that, do you, Roy? That down south.
Down south. I lived in North Carolina, man. I lived in Tennessee for 5 years. I know.
Yeah.
Texas, y'all really count. Texas is its own state. You know what I'm saying? Y'all not
really. You ain't lying about that.
Its own continent.
you ain't lying about that, bro. That is definitely true. We do our own thing out here. And let me see this thing running real quick. I'm trying to make sure this, because normally my Facebook chat would be populated right now. Let me make sure if it actually took if it actually cleared it here. I see YouTube in here. Make sure that the Facebook family are in here. Let's see. Okay, let me try it again.
Well, it's funny. I'm looking on your Facebook. So we're live on your Facebook, and people are making comments, but they're not.
Here they go. All right.
Yeah. As soon as
they get kind of nervous, bro. They get nervous. Like, he ain't bring us. Did he block us? No, I ain't blocked nobody. And you ain't got the BLT. I call it the BLT, the block lettuce and tomato sandwich. That's what I call it. All right. So yeah. So anyway, glad to have you all in. Please do me a favor, ladies and gentlemen, before we get started. Please like this video if you are on YouTube or Facebook. Please subscribe, Facebook, YouTube, share the video. Let people know. Grab a friend, grab an enemy, grab somebody that you don't like. This would be a good conversation. I think it'd be helpful for all of us to have this discussion. Also, if you like to support the ministry financially, let me give you the information here to do so before we get started. So that way it'll be here. For those who like to support the ministry financially, you can do so through PayPal, Cash App, SaikoWoods@yahoo.com, or $SaikoWoods for Cash App. You like to support the ministry through BCV, you can do that right there. BCV through teespring.com, store/Saiko-store-2. You can do it there. And of course, if you'd like to reach out to me via email, SaikoWoods@yahoo.com. So that is the information there for you, those who choose to do so. If you feel love the Lord to do that, definitely appreciate the support. And also, I really do appreciate the support of those of you who have been supporting this ministry financially. The things that I do, like the mics and things of that nature, it's all helpful. The research, information. Roy, this stuff costs money to do this kind of stuff. So it's not always.
It ain't free.
No. Salvation is, but the bills don't. So yeah, so I definitely appreciate the support and appreciate the prayers as well. So again, I'm joined here with Pastor Roy Dockery. This is the first time that he and I have had a conversation publicly. So those of you who know me, I don't have a script. I do believe in doing things decently and in order. Of course, I believe in having organic and just real conversations. I believe that as brothers and sisters in Christ, our first and foremost mission should be to glorify God in all things. And just why we always say at the end of every broadcast or every live, whatever you eat, drink, or whatever you do all to the glory and honor of God. That's not a cliche. That is scripture. That's 1 Corinthians 10:31. So therefore, we should do everything that we can by the power of God, by the grace of God, and by the Spirit of God to the glory of God. And so that is what I believe we are called to do. Of course, we don't all think alike. If we did, we would be unnecessary. Somebody will have to go and you'll be first. So So, but yeah, I'm definitely excited to have this conversation, ladies and gentlemen. This is what some of you all have been waiting for. Let me just go ahead and scroll up real quick. I already told Roy. Let me look at this timeline here. This individual right here, ladies and gentlemen, Ruslan KD. He came into the live. He came into the chat, yo. Not at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. This dude came up in the chat first. I mean, like first in line, like at Starbucks, like first in line, like at Best Buy before the Black Friday sale. This dude popped up in the chat, yo, at 5:35. Yeah. 5:35. He did. I don't think he was that early when he came on my live when I had him as a guest, but I'm just saying.
He early. He excited. I don't want a lot of live streams. See, that's why he excited.
Yeah. So I think he looking forward to that. I think if I had a camera on, he probably got his popcorn. He probably got his his Russian drink. His vodka. You know what I'm saying? He probably got that on there on lock on deck. Yeah. So, but here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to discuss and talk about systemic and institutional racism. I'm going to read the title for those who may just be coming in, so that way we have everybody can have a universal understanding of what we're going to be discussing just at the forefront. Are there systems, institutions, and laws primarily designed and or created that hinder, harm, and destroy the Black community today? If so, what are they? How should the church respond if these things are proven to be true? And how should the church respond if these things are proven to be false? So that is basically the description. That is basically the subject that we're going to talk about. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't, move and ebb and flow through any other topics that may, kind of like precipitate and come through other conversations that we may have. But I wanted to make sure that there's nothing that we discussed, Roy and I did, that I'm not going to be bringing to his attention that he may not be aware of. So the conversation is going to be, I believe, is going to be full orb. I meant to ask you, bro. I know you had said that you had other things you would just finished doing. Hope you got enough time. I hope you got at least an hour if you have. If not, let me know. If you
I got time. So
okay.
If I need sustenance, I get one of my kids to bring me something to eat. If you
Yeah, your boy Ruslan told me he had to go. Your boy Ruslan told me he had to go pee on my live. I said, bro, just say, you got to use, the rest. I gotta go pee. I'm like, bro, dude, really? Okay. Thanks for keeping it real. But look at it. Let me go ahead and give him a shout out, bro. Here, look at him. See what I'm saying? Look, you're welcome for helping set this up. Petty, and Ruslan, pettiness is not a spiritual gift, dog. Just want to let you know that. That's not one of the 18 spiritual gifts. Just let you know that, dog. All right. So, but yeah, I appreciate it. And so, how did this live come about? How did this meeting, come to fruition? Well, glad you asked. If we had a live conversation with Ruslan, I think a couple weeks ago, I believe it was, and so basically, at the end of our live, he had mentioned your name and said, "Hey, Pastor Roy Dockery?" I said, "No, I never heard him before." He said, "Man, he's dope. You need to bring him on." I said, "Okay." I said, "If he wants to cam up, we can cam up." And so here we are. And I'm glad to have you here, man. I want to give you opportunity, man, to introduce yourself for those who may not know you, and tell the viewers and the audience a little bit about yourself, bro.
Yeah, man. So Pastor Roy Dockery from YouTube and the Patreon community, Pastor Roy Dockery. I was a Christian hip hop artist for like 18 years. I'm ex-Navy. Me and Saiko just talked about that. Yep. Navy nuke. Currently, first ministry primarily, right? I'm married, got 3 kids. I'm here in North Carolina, where we just moved to last summer, but I've been all over the country and lived in multiple places. My profession, I'm actually a healthcare technology executive. I work in automation and robotics. And so that's my full-time job. And then I also serve as the outreach minister. So I'm over our CARES ministry, which is compassion, advocacy, relationship, edification, and service to our community at World Victory Church here in Greensboro, North Carolina. And then my family also has a private foundation where we help families, and we sponsor a variety of activities where you combine art with outreach for discipleship and artistry and all of that stuff. So a lot of stuff going on, but I've only been on YouTube since, I don't know, December, roughly. So December, so channel started taking off, doing some things, but I do a lot of Ask Pastor Roy sessions and in different conversations that I have with mentees and things of that nature, man. So a lot of my content is kind of observations, right? Feedback. I give professional advice, right? Leadership advice, ministry advice, life advice, all of that kind of stuff to people around the country from age 15 to 58 right now in my community, people of different races and from different countries. So
good. So you say you were a pastor, right? Are you still pastoring? Right, you still pastoring, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm on staff at a church here locally in Greensboro. Yep.
Okay. What's your leadership's name? What's the pastor's name?
Is Bishop Adrian Starks.
Okay.
At World Victory in Greensboro here. So.
Okay, cool. All right, well, man, listen, we already discussed what we wanted to talk about. People already know what we want to talk about. It's not new to anyone here. So I want to let people know we're just going to have a dialogue. We're going to have a dialogue. This is not about me trying to attack anything or attack anyone, rather. I believe that what we discuss, if it's public, it should be discussed publicly. Anything that I post, anything that I put out there, you're not under any obligation to, hey, man, I need to talk to you about this privately. I mean, you can. That's fine. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But if I put anything out there publicly, then it's open for public, discussion and even debate, dialogue, or disagreement. So, so I wanted us to define our terms. Of course, I believe that that's going to be helpful. We both agreed to that. To make sure that we understand each other, to make sure that there's nothing that may be said that may have a different meaning or understanding. I do believe that words matter. I do believe that God has given us the gift of language and understanding. And so my goal is to make sure that whatever I say, it is clear, it is based on facts, and most importantly, that is biblical. It is biblical. And so since both of us are pastors and since both of us are Christians, I don't think there'll be any disagreement or argument that our positions need to land where Scripture lands. If it does not, and as long as it's not sinful, then we should have that freedom and liberty to let people move in the lane that God has called them to move. But the moment or the nanosecond that those things cause other brothers and sisters to stumble, the things that cause division, it may cause people to have unnecessary divisions and conflicts, then we need to pull back and we need to reassess and ask ourselves some serious questions. And what am I doing here? What is the purpose? What is my influence? Because all of us have influence. Whether you have 2,000 followers, 2 followers, 200 followers, or 2 million followers, each and every one of us have influence. And so God is going to hold us responsible based on the influence and the people that God has stewarded for us to care for and for us to disciple and to bring them closer to Christ. So anyway, man, I wanted us to talk about this. I wanted us to kind of like to lay out our definition or defining some terms. And so racism, let me give you my definitions, and if it's anything you disagree with, hey, bro, feel free. Let me know where you may have a different view on that, and then we can grow and build from that. So, racism, from what I've looked at these definitions, and I know some of these definitions may have morphed over time, but just for the sake of conversation, racism, for what has been defined as prejudice based on race, or one race being superior over others. I think that we would probably agree, Roy, that we know that the term race is a social construct. It's not something that we would see other than we would know that race, we're dealing with that one race is just in Christ, or either actually two, either in Christ or you were in Adam. But yeah, there is no hierarchy or class, but for the sake of conversation, racism is being defined as prejudice based on one's race or color or whatever like that, or one's idea of being superior over the other. Would you agree with that term so far?
I agree with that term, with the way that it defines as far as prejudice being superior, right, and like a mindset of inferiority over it. I guess we normally talk about racism in action. So I normally kind of tend towards in some literature, you'll see racism defined as prejudice plus power. Because like for racism to actually be a force, right? Not an observation, not a personal conviction, but for it to be a force, someone has to have power to be able to levy or allow that inferiority to have impact. So that's the only thing I'd kind of add to it. Because when we talk about racism, especially from a systemic perspective, right? Like that definition of racism that's normally in the dictionary, and I don't disagree with that, but it's normally referring to like individual feelings and like individual kind of perspectives versus like what we would call, like when people be like, that's racist, it's normally an action that somebody's calling racist, right? What somebody said, what somebody called, what somebody wrote. So I normally will say it's kind of prejudice and an idea of inferiority. But when you're talking about it in action, it's someone has to have some kind of power that they're using that prejudice and that kind of superior mindset to do something or to disenfranchise a group of people based on their race. So.
Okay. So I want to get down to these other definitions, but I guess I'm just going to go ahead and just go with the flow of what we're talking about. Yeah. So I'm just going to ask you this $1 million question then. Since you believe that racism is prejudice plus power, can Black people be racist?
I think Black people can be racist, right? And that's why there's an individual, right? Like there's like an individual action of defining racism. There are Black people who clearly identify as Black supremacists. So if you're a Black supremacist, you think you're superior to another race by definition that we just use, right? That makes you racist. So I think there are Black people who think they're inferior, or superior. But when you talk about it from a systemic perspective, right, which is why I think we'll get to the systemic racism discussion, there's power. So if Black people have power where they can deny access to people, which I'm a vice president, I run a global company, I can clearly be racist. And I can make my company systemically racist because I could choose to not hire white people. Right? So that
could you choose not to hire Black people too?
Say what?
Could you choose not to hire Black people too?
I could, which would also make it systemically racist.
Okay. Right? So I mean that's a new one. That's a new one. This is
women, right? Like I could choose not to hire women. I can choose not to hire a homosexual because of my faith, right? Like if I have power in my position, I get to determine who works in my entire country, in the US and Canada, right? So, I can deny applicants.
So let me ask you this question. So then, if you're saying that racism means prejudice plus power, are you saying that if a person doesn't have power, that they can't be racist?
And so I'm kind of like, and that's why I'm saying there's like individual, and then there's kind of the systemic, which I think we'll get in that definition. So the prejudice plus power for me, I'm if I pull it back, kind of reserve that for the systemic, like racism in action within systems and institutions, because anybody can be racist, right? If you have an idea of inferiority, or if you have an idea of supremacy or superiority, whether you're Hispanic, Black, white, right, Asian, whatever, you can be racist.
Okay.
But for a system or for like a combination of processes that drives an outcome, which is how I would define a system, like even from an engineering perspective, for that system to be racist, that means somebody in that system has a prejudice and they use that power, right, to basically benefit who they think is the superior person, right? For whatever, for a variety of reasons, one of them being race.
Okay, so what are those systems? When you say systemic or systematic racism, what systems do you believe, I guess today? And like I said, we haven't gotten to the other definitions, but I guess we're going to just flow it like this, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, what systems do you believe that exist today that are systemically designed for the harm or the hindrance of Black people today?
So my answer to your question is going to be no. I don't think there are any systems specifically designed, targeted to keep Black people down. And I am studying to be a lawyer, so I'm very specific about questions. But the reason I'm saying that is, but in kind of defense of, right, out of love and grace for people who have a very, I guess, a kind of sweeping definition of systemic racism, right? Like it's one thing to ask if the system is built for the detriment of people, or to ask, is the system built to my benefit? right? So the system may not be built to specifically target Black people, but if the system is built to the benefit of the white male, which is largely what America was constructed around, what the Constitution was written for, what the first 10 Bill of Rights was clarifying, right? Then there's a system built to the benefit of a group of people. So if I'm intentionally trying to benefit the majority, right? Because America is a majority white country for now, even though it's diversifying, then the minorities wind up having a negative impact because the system is not built to their benefit. Right?
Okay, and what systems are that? I mean to interrupt. Maybe it may be a lie, but what systems are you saying that may be that could possibly be doing that, or that could cause minorities, or particularly Black folk? Just say we Black. Let's just do with Black folk. Yeah, and
this is probably not going to give you the definitive answer. I think any system can be racist.
Okay.
Right? And so to give you an example, right? When I go back to utilizing prejudice plus power, right? So if we go to a very small component, if you take a classroom, for instance, right? Like, would you consider a classroom a system?
Yeah.
So, right. So a classroom is a system, but the only person that dictates what happens in that classroom is one teacher. So if
they have the authority. Yeah.
Right. Because they've got the authority, right? They determine the outcomes. They give the grades. They determine who's gifted. They determine who's remedial. They a lot of times have a lot of say in what the discipline is. So if I have a racist teacher, even if it's 12, it could be 100 teachers in a school. If I have a racist teacher, the children in that class are having a systemically racist experience.
But they're not. Wouldn't racism have to be proven though? It can't be assumed. We would have to prove that.
Yeah. And even if it's been proven, right? Like we've got teachers, even throughout the pandemic. I don't know if you've seen some of the news articles where teachers thought they were off Zoom and started saying some reckless racist stuff about their students. This was college professors, primary school, secondary school. And it's one teacher, right? It's not the entire school. It's not the entire institution.
Right.
That teacher has, especially if you're talking about elementary school, right, where you only have one teacher, that teacher has the ability to hold the student back. That teacher has the ability to put his child in remedial education. That teacher has the ability to recommend somebody for a gifted and talented program. So if you have a racist teacher, right, like the system is there. The system isn't geared towards being negative to that Black student. But if nothing in that system is put in place if nothing in that system is checking on that teacher to making sure she's being equitable, if there's no, if nobody's reporting it because people don't know or they're unaware, then if you look at that, like the school can have a Black principal and a Black assistant principal in a Black neighborhood, and have a racist teacher. And then all the students who go through that class, their grades are going to be impacted by race, right? Their discipline is impacted by race. And what if
it's not? Let me push back a little bit. So you're saying their discipline could be affected by race, but what if it's not? What if it's just based on their behavior? Because I think a lot of times the default button is automatically when we're dealing with Black folk and it's a white person that's dealing with Black children and they have to either expel them or put them out of the class, then automatically, we want to throw the flag on the field and say, oh, that's racism. Why? Why does it always have to be racism when in fact, sometimes it could be Black people? Matter of fact, I was reading a story about where is it here? Let me look at it here. Cause I want to read this. I think this is going to be important on what we're talking about here too, Roy. Racial disparities in school discipline, right? I want to read this, and we haven't got to the definitions, y'all. So just bear with us. We just dealing with racism just on the first part. All right.
It's a good conversation.
Yeah. We ain't going away. This is the weekend. Memorial Day. This is racial disparities in school discipline. All right. This is from the late Dr. Walter E. Williams, and it was actually dated in 2018. So I just want to read a little excerpt of it, y'all. Quote. Gail Harriott, a law professor at the University of San Diego and a member of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and her special assistant and counselor, Allison Soman, have written an important article in the Texas Review of Law and Politics titled, quote, "The Department of Education's Obama-era, initiative on racial disparities in school discipline." The article is about the Departments of Education and Justice's disparate impact vision, wherein they see racial discrimination as the factor that explains why Black male students face suspension and expulsion more often than other students. Faced with threats from the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, schools have instituted new disciplinary policies. For example, after the public school district in Oklahoma City was investigated by the OCR, there was a 42.5% decrease in the number of suspensions. According to an article in the Oklahoman, one teacher said, quote, "Students are yelling, cursing, hitting, and screaming at teachers, and nothing is being done, but teachers are being told to teach and ignore the behaviors," end of quote. According to Chalkbeat, new high school teachers left one school because they didn't feel safe. There have been cases in which students have assaulted teachers and returned to school the next day. Many of the complaints about Black student behavior, here it is, bro. Many of the complaints about Black student behavior are coming from Black teachers. I doubt whether they could be accused of racial discrimination against Black students. The first vice president of the St. Paul, Minnesota chapter of the NAACP said, it's, quote, "very disturbing," end of quote, that the school district would retaliate against a Black teacher for, quote, "simply voicing the concern," end quote, that when Black students are not held accountable for misbehaving, they are set up for failure in life. I'm almost done. It says in an article in Education Week earlier this year titled, quote, "When students assault teachers, effects can be lasting," end of quote, discusses the widespread assaults of teachers across the country. In the 2015 and 2016 school year, at 5.8% of the nation's 3.8 million teachers were physically attacked by a student. Almost 10% were threatened with injury, according to the federal education data. Measures that propose harsh punishment for students who assault teachers have not been successful. In North Carolina, your state, bro, North Carolina, a bill was introduced that proposed that students 16 or older could be charged with a felony if they assaulted a teacher. It was opposed, here it is, it was opposed by children's advocacy and disability rights groups. In Minnesota, a 2016 bill would have required school boards to automatically expel a student who threatened or inflicted bodily harm on a student for up to a year. It too was opposed, even in light of the fact that teachers have suffered serious bodily harm, such as the case in which a high school student slammed a teacher into a concrete wall and then squeezed his throat. That teacher ended up with a traumatic brain injury. And there are plenty of visuals of assaults on teachers. Here's a tiny sample. Florida Seminole Middle School, Pennsylvania's Cheltenham High School, Illinois' Rich Central High School, and so forth and so on. It says, the Justice Department of University of Texas in San Antonio says that according to his study of 1,600 teachers, about 44% of teachers who had been victims of physical assault said that being attacked had a negative impact on their job performance. Nearly 30% said that they could no longer trust the student who had attacked them, and 27% said that they thought of quitting their teaching career afterwards. My question is, this is what Dr. Williams said, my question is there any reason whatsoever for adults to tolerate this kind of behavior from our young people? So I read that, man, because I wanted to just give some context to that, because a lot of times when we talk about the education system, we talk about, you know, teachers and talk about students and how they learn. And I'm not sure if you have heard this narrative before, you know, well, white people don't understand Black kids. Well, I'm not understanding what that means. Behavior is behavior. And I don't believe that sinful behavior should get a pass because you're Black. What do you think?
Yeah. And so there's a couple things, and I like the example that you gave for a couple reasons, but there's one problem whenever people use statistics to create policies, right? So that's one problem. So like the original issue you discussed in that article was them saying that they found a racial disparity in the way that children were being treated when it came to discipline, but they only focused on discipline, right? They didn't talk about grades. They didn't talk about the percentage of Black students that are denied advanced programs, right? So we're only talking about discipline, which, as somebody who has a degree in education, right, and ran the community service programs for Guilford County schools for 3 years when I was in college, is a very small portion of education. So I'm just going to take it on the disciplinary, and I'm going to leave out the stuff that I mentioned, which was, right, advanced programs, kids getting remedial, getting bad grades, which affects their GPA, which affects their ability to get in college and to earn more money when they're older, because they've got teachers that could be racist. So,
but hold on. Can we deal with the behavior part first?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, though. So, okay. And that's why, but I want to make sure we're clear, right? I talked about all of those things. Mm-hmm. So on the discipline side, I completely agree, right? But this is the problem with policies, right? The policy was children. What the data showed was that, a black student and a white student would commit the same offense, but the discipline applied to the black student. Black students were expelled at higher rates. Black students got in-school suspension at higher rates. So that entire study was based off of bad students and the fact that black bad students got treated better than white bad students. And then the policy correction, right? Or the policy correction, if you look at that, was, okay, let's not discipline students. That's just stupid policy. Right,
but that was because of the pushback for being accused of being racist.
Yeah, so and that's the thing, right? But the way that you correct disproportionately disciplining black kids for the same, right? Like that's, the problem was you got black kids getting disciplined, and I've read some of that research. Like if me and a white kid get in a fight in a school, I get expelled, he gets in-school suspension. That's not the same, right?
Is that always the same?
It's not always the case, but I just want to use that example, right? Because and to your point, and to the gentleman's point that wrote that article, the way that the schools tried to overcorrect that was now, since we're saying that our teachers are racist and disciplining, then we no longer allow our teachers to discipline. That's just a dumb policy. Like like whether it was racial or whatever, that's a bad policy that led to the conclusion you're talking about, right? Because now, and I'll give you an example, because I have a lot of friends who are teachers, because I went to college for education, but then I joined the Navy. So all of the people I went to college with became teachers. So I'll give you an example. There was an older white woman. She's actually British. She's not from the US at all. She is retired, has mixed grandchildren, right? Like her son married a black woman. All of that stuff. And so she was just substitute teaching. So she's in the class and she came up to church. She came to me at church crying about this when I lived in Delaware. She's in class and there was a rule from the school, a policy that you can't allow more than 2 people to go to the bathroom at the same time. These are like 7th or 8th grade kids. So 3 young black girls get up to try to go to the bathroom. And she says, no, only 2 of you can go, right? Like policy, one of you have to stay in there, here. They proceed to smack her book out of her hand. They threw stuff at her. They called her the B. They called her racist, right? Like for all of this. And I got this old white lady looking at me like, Roy, what should I have done? And then she called the principal. The principal didn't do anything, because then the mom threatened to come down to the school and put hands on the substitute teacher that was racist towards her daughter. Like all of that is wrong. Like there's nothing right about that, right? But that it's still not addressing the fact that you had black students getting harsher punishments for the same disciplinary issues than white students, right?
Like, can I add one point? What about the factor of offense? Would not offenses also escalate or cause more serious consequences? I mean, like for example, if you have the same student, same black kid committing the same offenses, then would not the penalty for that person be more severe than the white kid that may have done it once? I'm just putting it out there because again,
absolutely, right? Like, and that's the way that the discipline should be plotted out, right? Like, if we all know from a criminal justice perspective, right? It's called a repeat offender for a reason, right? Like, you get more time when you repeat offend, but so I don't disagree with that at all, right? I think discipline should escalate, right? I think you need to keep physical threats out of the classroom, like. I've got friends who have been, like beat up and tried to get grabbed. Like, I don't think anybody should have to deal with that and make $30,000 to $60,000 a year as a public school teacher. That's ridiculous. And it's why I'm not in education. But so I agree with that, right? I agree with the fact that there was. And so what I'm saying at the end of that is I'm agreeing with you, right? I think the was an overreaction, right, to the public stigma of y'all doing this to black kids. And now everybody, white kids, black kids, Asian kids, everybody could choke out their teacher, and then nobody cares. Like, that's not fair. That's not. Yeah.
But I want to add one point though. But again, why is racism being the default button that's being pushed? Because this black person was dealt with, quote unquote, harsher than the white student. Unless that's proven, then would we not be bearing false witness? Would we not be making a false accusation without facts. Because let me give a biblical example of that. And this is going to tie into our next definition. Okay, perception. All right, perception. Because we all have perceptions. It all doesn't mean that our perceptions are always accurate. So I'm thinking about two particular instances of perceptions. One in the Old Testament and one in the New. Remember the story of Hannah in First Samuel 1, I believe verses 9 through 18. Remember, she was barren. She wanted to have a child. Elkanah, her husband, was trying to console her, but she was pouring out her heart to the Lord. The text says, I believe, that Eli observed. He observed. He perceived her demeanor and her behavior as a drunken woman, because she wasn't saying anything, but her mannerisms, right? Her lips were moving, but nothing was coming out. And so Eli made a perception, which was a wrong perception, and then it became a wrong pronouncement of a judgment against her. And he said, "Put away your wine from you. How long are you going to be drinking your wine?" And she said, "No, my Lord, I'm not drinking any wine. I'm pouring out my soul to the Lord because I'm grieving, out of the anguish of my heart." And so I believe that there are times that we can perceive something and it may look or it may even appear to be true, but if we don't have the facts of it, then the Bible says in Proverbs 18:13, he who gives an answer before he or she hears is a folly and a shame to them. And so then I believe another example in the New Testament in Acts 2, on Pentecost, Peter and the apostles, the Holy Spirit comes upon them. They speak with new languages, and the multitudes looking at them like, man, these dudes look like they full, they lit. And Peter at the time like, no, dude, we're not drunk as you suppose. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's only the 9th hour, right? And so their perception again of what they saw, they actually saw it, but it was not the reality. It was not the truth of what had happened. I believe a lot of times, man, if we're not careful, our perceptions can make the wrong pronouncements, and then we are labeling things racist or labeling things injustice, and it's not. So I wanted to put that. I want to get your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I like that, right? And I don't know how many of your videos, my videos you've got to watch, but one of the things I consistently say that is, if you call everything racist, then nothing is racist. Mm-hmm. That's why I like defining what I mean by racism. And we talked about that a little bit before, because there's also, and I just finished, I got the pre-read Jerome Gay's book, The Whitewashing of Christianity. Mm-hmm. And so I got an advanced copy of that and got to read it. But it's like, there's racial ignorance, there's racial insensitivity, right? There's racial indifference, and then there's racism. And if we call all of those things racism, then like you're defeating the purpose, right? Because I can't address when it's everything is the boogeyman, right? So yeah, and so like I said, in the example that you gave, like there's plenty of data about the disparities in teaching, right? I mean, in discipline, in like advanced placement classes, like there's data out there, there's facts out there on that, right? But like you said,
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad. I want you to define that. I want you to define what disparity, because that's another definition I wanted us to talk about.
So, but then the difficult thing, right, is then, okay, even if I have data that states that this is a fact, then I automatically, and to your point, and I agree, I can't assume every time a Black student is disciplined that it is now because of race. Even if I have data, if I have statistical information, research and proof that says, Black students are disciplined at a higher rate, first of all, it doesn't mean they didn't do anything, right? So the punishment may be greater, but it didn't mean that they didn't have an infraction, right? That led to them, that there was a behavioral issue to begin with, right? So, and so I think that's the problem. But yeah, when we, right, and you said disparity, right? So it's like,
I want you to define that. If you have a definition, I have a definition. But I wanted to know if you had a definition to help people understand. When you say disparity, what do you mean by disparity?
When I say disparity, I literally mean that you and me can be looking at something at the same time, and we can have disparate views of what we're looking at, right? So just based on observation, perception, information we have, experience. I can look at something, you can look at something, you might say it's racist, I might say it's not racist, but we both observe the same exact thing, and then there's a disparity in our conclusion, right? So there's that you can have and this happens all the time with research, right? You can look up a research paper and then there are 12 books written where 12 people came to 10 different conclusions on the same exact research, right? Because it's a lot of times so to me, it's people, disparity is looking at the same information or even looking at the same situation, but then people coming to different conclusions.
Okay. So I define disparity, and it may be kind of tying into what you're saying, but I define disparity. I'm just giving the definitions that what has been, has been posted. The disparity is defined as the condition of being unequal. It can be unequal in age, rank. It can be in levels of degree or difference. So, would you say that disparities automatically equal discrimination in a negative sense?
No, right? Because disparity can be based on, I forgot who said it. I just heard it the other day, right? Equity does not equal outcome, right? So if you and I do the same thing, you give us the same test or we have to complete the same task, right? Like that's
right.
equitable. You gave us both the same thing, right? Somebody gave us wood to build the fence.
Right.
But you and I may not build the same fence because the outcome is based on, right, the motivation, the effort that's put in, the education, the skill level, or whatever. So you can have something that's unequal, but it's unequal for a reason.
Okay. So
right?
would you say that, okay, so let me make sure I understand what you're saying then. Would you say, or are you saying that disparities automatically equate to racism? And the reason why I'm asking that is because that's the narrative. If you watch the news or read, articles or stories or hear the media, every time we talk about, we as people, every time you hear people talk about, disparity, automatically it's discrimination, automatically it's racism. And I'm saying, okay, disparities does not equal racism, and disparities does not always necessarily equal discrimination in a negative sense. There can be unequal, like you said, outcomes, but it does not mean that there's racism. What's your thoughts about that?
Exactly. Yeah, disparity does not automatically equal discrimination, right? Disparity does not automatically equal racism, right? Or some kind of systemic obstacle, right? Like I said, like if you and I had 10 feet of lumber and we needed to build a ladder, right? I could build a short, small, right? I could build a complex footstool and it only get me 2 feet off the ground. You could build a 5-foot ladder with a 10 feet, like as long as you're giving the same the same resource, right? To me, discrimination is giving somebody an 8-foot ladder and telling them to reach something at 12 feet when everybody else has a 10-foot ladder. That's discrimination. You want to give me an opportunity, but you're already kind of short. You're shortening me to begin with, right? Or you're not giving me the same resources other people have. That's discrimination. But the disparity does not equal, right? Like it doesn't that, right? Something can be unequal for very valid reasons, right?
Okay.
Like it's not always race or class or gender. Yeah.
Okay. So go back to the ladder. Go back to the ladder illustration then. So, and I think I'm picturing in my mind, 3 people standing behind a fence, and you got a tall dude, medium-sized dude, and you got a short Napoleon, little Webster Arnold from different strokes dude, right?
Yeah.
Is the tall guy wrong for not giving the short dude a ladder, or should the short dude get his own ladder if he's able to get his ladder to be able to raise himself up to where he can see? I'm just putting it out there just for an example of illustration. I'm saying, is it the tall dude's fault for being tall that he can see, and the middle guy's fault, fault because he can see, but the short guy, he can't see? So should the other two dudes feel guilty because the third dude, the shorty, is not able to see what everybody else is seeing?
And again, I'll answer it from a secular perspective. No, as Christians, then yeah, because we should do to help the least of those amongst us, right? So if there's a short person in the grocery store and they're trying to reach, and I'm giving a real example because I'm 6'2", right? So I'm often in the grocery store and it's some short lady asking me if I can grab something off the top shelf.
Right.
What do I tell her, to get over it and go grab a ladder? Or I can just grab it and give it to her, because it's a privilege to be tall when you're trying to. And I actually have there's an article on my website that's called how to use your advantage. And I actually talk about supremacy and privilege, talking about height, which is funny you use that example because I was just born this way, right? I'm just tall.
Right.
But if I'm watching somebody else struggle because they're short, like I'm not better. I didn't put any more effort. I just happen to be born tall. So like,
yeah, I think that's the difference. That's the difference.
From an equity perspective, right? Like if we're all and you use the fence, so it throws it off a little bit because like me metaphorically, what is the fence? But if we're on the ground, right? If we're all on the ground and it's level playing field and someone's short, someone's tall, someone's fat, someone's skinny, like that's just, those are disparities, right? Like we just talked about, everything isn't equal and maybe everybody needs to get to an outcome. But if I'm tall, I've got a longer gait. So yeah, it'll take me less steps to get 20 feet than somebody who's 4'1". But as long as nothing's in my way, right? As long as there's not a hurdle, then we all just based on our makeup, right, have to put in that effort to get 20 feet. But if the short guy is short and also has a ditch that he has to crawl through and barbed wire, and I don't have that, then that's not equitable. You know what I'm saying? So
okay, so I'm glad you talk about equity then. So here's the question. Does the Bible speak about equity? Does the Bible talk about, social equity? In other words, do we see examples in scripture where everyone has the same equal outcome?
But see, you just said equity, but you jumped to outcome, right? I just said a minute ago that equity has, but from my perspective, equity has nothing to do with outcome.
But that's what equity is. Equity is of outcome. Equality is based on being equal to and being the same as another individual. But equity is the equality of outcomes. So if you're talking about all three people being on the same level playing field, but this individual that's short, that's how God made them. But the other two taller gentlemen shouldn't feel guilted because God gave them extra height, but neither should those two mock the short person because they're not at the height that they are. But I believe that the scriptures speak regarding, number one, God is responsible and God is sovereign over who gets what and who has what. So I'm 5'11". You're 6'2".
Yeah.
Okay, so that's unfair. So
yeah, it's not fair. And so just to go back real quick, right? Because because we didn't get to define equity before we jumped into that conversation.
Okay, go ahead.
That's why you and I have been used, because you said equity is the did you say the equality of outcome?
Equity is justice according to natural law or right, freedom from bias and or favoritism. It is also equal outcomes. It's defined as that as well too. Equal outcomes.
So the definition I normally think of is kind of the first one you give, right? Like, and it's equity is the quality of being fair and impartial. So equity is impartiality. So we know the Bible has a problem with partiality.
Absolutely.
So impartiality would be equitable, but I appreciate that because it's what definition you're using, right? Because when I talk about equity, I'm talking about being fair, right? Like equity to me is, right, it's the quality of being fair. Like that's the definition of equity.
Okay, so fair like how? Okay, so do you believe that everybody should have the same of everything? I mean, like you just mentioned that you study nuclear physics, right?
Yeah.
And you have, matter of fact, we were talking about our houses. So you're sitting on half an acre of land.
Yep.
Okay. We know some black people that don't have that, right? Why don't they have it and you do? You see what I'm saying? So it's like, if we're talking about equal outcomes, then that's anti-gospel.
I want to agree with you there. And so that's why when I say equity, I'm not talking about equal outcomes. When I say equity, I'm talking about, and again, right, like I grew up in the hood, you know what I'm saying? Like I come from a single family home, you know what I mean? Like stepdad was a drug dealer and a gangbanger. So like from a starting place perspective, right? Like I didn't start where some people did. I started, above or below where other people did. So my outcome currently is based on my effort. My outcome is based on me getting 3 bachelor's degrees and a master's degree. My outcome is based on going to the military and studying one of the most difficult traits there, then going into healthcare. So there's an outcome for that. So when I'm saying fair, to use like a really basic illustration of what I mean by equity, I kind of just used it when we talked about all the people at a different height, right? Like there's equity to me means we're all on the football field. We're on the 0 yard line. And that's fair, right? I don't care how tall you are, how short you are, how much in shape you are, because that's an individual trait. But if the scenario is set up equitably, right? It would be fair if we lined everybody up, right, on the 0 yard line. If I put somebody on the 10 yard line, that's an advantage. If I put somebody at the back of the end zone, that's a disadvantage. So
would that be wrong if that's that person's field?
What do you mean if it's their field?
Like say I own the football field, right? Yeah. And here's a 10 yard line or whatever, and I say, okay, Roy, I want you 10 yards up. Not because of anything, not because I like you or nothing. I'm making a decision because it's my field, and I have that authority or that power or whatever, right, to do that. And I say, okay, I want to put you 10 yards up. I want to put this person right where they are, and this person 5 yards back. Yeah, would that be wrong? Can we say that that's injustice, or can we say that that's a form of racism, or can we say that that's partiality without having any facts or evidence of the motivation of the individual's heart to say, hey, why did you give Roy 10 yards, ahead of this person and 5 yards ahead? 5 yards back from this person. You see what I'm saying? What I'm noticing is that people don't even ask questions. They just assume and say, hey, here's what I see. This is wrong. This is racism. This is injustice. Let's march, which I don't see the Bible telling Christians to march, but that's another topic for another time. I ain't gonna go there with you yet. But I see that that's the problem. We're not asking questions. We're making assumptions, and then making those assumptions the standard that is the norm for people to try to follow. Wait a minute, what did Ruslan say? This conclusion that Seiko is about to go to so whack when it comes to scripture and how it applies to society. Ruslan don't want he don't want to do that.
Let's stick on subject. I don't even have comments up, honestly, because I'm trying to give you my attention.
I just happen to see it, but that's fine because Ruslan had his opportunity. He dropped the ball. But anyway, so my point is, if Christ gives us a parable in Matthew 25. Matter of fact, I want us to, if you got your Bible, let's look at it real quick. I know it ain't Sunday yet, but let's go there real quick. Let's go there real quick. Matthew 25, and I'm at verse 14, because this is still on the subject of equity.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm looking at Matthew 25, the parable of the talents, verse 14. Let me know you got it, and I'll read it when you're ready. Okay. Yeah. So it says, for it is just like a man about to go on a journey who called his own slaves and entrusted his possessions to them. Verse 15, and to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1. And here's the catch. Here's the purpose. Each according to his own ability. So now Christ, who's sovereign, who knows, he gives one man 5, one man 2, and one man 1. Why didn't he just give all of them 5 talents? Yeah. Why didn't Jesus give them all 5 talents? Why didn't Jesus say, you know what? They all made the Imago Dei. So equality, that's already established. Yeah. They made in the Imago Dei, right? But the outcomes or one's abilities, or one's skills, or one's effort is going to be seen in how they handle these talents. So my question is, how could we, if we're talking about everybody having, and I don't think you are, but I'm still, I guess, trying to put that out there for those who believe that.
I got you, brother.
That, you know what I'm saying? That equity has to be everybody having, equal opportunity.
Communism, all right? Equity got to be communism.
That Marxism, all of that. You know what I'm saying?
So, but I like, and you answered your question a little bit, right? Because Jesus said that I'm giving based on their talent. But and again, I don't know exactly where it is, but I don't think anybody will disagree with the story. When you had the parable, of the workers, right? And then you had those, and Jesus said, "This is how much you're being paid for the day."
For that day, yes.
Came at the end of the day, and then the people who had been there all day got mad. It was like, how are you paying them the same amount? It was like, that's what I said I was paying for the day.
Now you agreed to it. Yeah.
And you agreed to it. So,
Yeah.
and so that's the other thing too. And I'm starting to hear an echo. Where's that coming from?
Okay.
Okay. But yeah, and so in that, right, because in that scenario, Jesus basically said, right, like he's saying, like, this is based on this is compensation, or I'm giving this based on their value, right? Their input, what they've done, what they've proven, what I know they're capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And even in that, right, he distributed it and had an expectation. So every scenario, right, that's like if I have a prize for first, second, and third place, I don't have to make the prize for first, second, and third place the same. I can make first place $10,000. I can make second place $5,000. Right. And like you all run the race, but depending on when you finish, then you're awarded that prize based on how the rules were set up to begin with. Mm-hmm. Right. So,
would you agree though? But still, would you agree even with the fact that Jesus gave those three men different talents, different amounts of money? Because that's what it was. It was money. Yep. So I think that what's a slap in the face, or I believe what speaks against people saying that, there's injustice in wage earning and things of that nature. I think that now we have to prove that, because again, if as Christians, if Christians are called to speak truth, and if we're called to judge based on facts and not feelings and assumptions, right? Then we have to say, okay, why did this person get more money than this person? Why did this woman get less than this man? You know what I'm saying? There are factors that may be involved in there. We know based on the data and research that women they don't stay at the jobs longer than most men in certain positions. They have maternity leave and things of that nature. There are other factors, and it's not always because of their skin color or their gender per se that they're being discriminated against.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Because we're getting away from your illustration real quick, and I didn't get a chance to answer when you said.
Go ahead.
So, and just to answer, like, right, if I own the football field, right, and I want to say you started 10, you started -5, you go back to the bathroom, right? A private, and this is the one thing, and again, I say it on my channel. A private company, an individual has the full right. You and I both raised a hand to protect the Constitution. The Constitution gives a private citizen the right to discriminate, to be racist, to not like you, to not hire you if you're black, to not hire if you're gay, to not hire if you're Christian. Private citizens can do that, right? So when I'm talking about a system that needs to be held accountable, the only system that has to bear the burden and the responsibility of the Constitution is the United States government, right? Like, so that's, when you had discrimination, everybody else, unless you volunteer to say, I'm an equal opportunity employer, Title IX doesn't apply to you, right? And I give it like, because people got on what's my store? People got on Hobby Lobby because Hobby Lobby refused to provide birth control.
Right.
Hobby Lobby cannot hire Christians if it doesn't want to. It is a private company. It is allowed to discriminate. Churches, right? Your church don't have to hire a Muslim secretary. Your church is allowed to only employ Christians. They are allowed to discriminate, but you can't call yourself an equal opportunity employer and put yourself under the law of equal opportunity because you want tax benefits for Title IX. You want tax benefits for gender equality. So, and so I just want to say, I think a private person can do whatever you want, right? Like it's your business, do what you will. And then, and I say this sometimes and people think I'm playing. I'm fine with a white only sign. Put a white only sign back on the building. And the reason being, right? You get a choice. It's a free country. Mm-hmm. But to me, I want that to be known. If you don't want money from black folk because you think I'm unprofessional and whatever else, put it on your website and I just won't spend money there. Right? Like I don't want to patronize people that think I'm less than human and they don't respect the image of God that I made in. Like I'm fine with not shopping at your business. That's fine. Like I don't have a problem with, and it sounds weird, but I don't have a problem with businesses that want to discriminate. Just let me know. And then I can choose with my economic power, my purchasing power, with my influence, because everybody has influence, as you stated earlier, if I choose to shop there or not, right? But then trying to gaslight everybody over everything, I think is unnecessary as well, right? Like there's a lot to it. So like I said, in that example, I think that's up to that person, right? And then the people who go to that stadium, the people who play on that football team, the people who work in that football field have to look at that information and come to a conclusion, right? Because other than that, it's really hard. It's really hard to prove racism, right?
Say that again. I want you to say that again, because I want that to be on record for the second time, for in case somebody didn't hear it the first time.
Yeah, it's hard to prove racism, right? If you look at the court of law, right? Like racism you normally need a preponderance of evidence, right? Like I've got to prove. And so in your example, right, I've got to prove that every time you hired a black person, you put them at -5. Every time you hired a white person, you put them at +10. The only thing I got to do to throw off that whole scenario is put one black person at the 10-yard line. Then you can't prove it's racist. So yeah, I put 5 black people at -5, but I also put a black person at 10. I also put a black person at 5. So is that racist, right? And then it becomes this subjective thing unless you have like all of this massive amounts of data, or you catch somebody on tape, right, calling them the N-word in the break room, and then they, you know what I mean, and then they get canceled. But there is a lot, right? There's a lot of, and I'll agree with you, and you've kind of alluded to it a couple times, that it's like, you know, even Sean King, right? Like everything that comes out, it's automatically like, this person needs to get fired. This person is racist. Like, what's their address? What's their license plate? Like, let's go ride on them. And I'm like, do we know what occurred in this situation, right? Like, honestly, I was in leadership in a majority white church for like 5 years, 2 different churches. And I know a lot of white people who love Jesus, right, but are racially ignorant, right? Because they don't know a lot of black people. They don't have relationships with black people. And there's stuff even now, I mentor other executives who call me to ask me racial questions so that they don't get gaslit at work. They're like, hey, Roy, look, I got a question on George Floyd. Let me ask you this question, because they know that I'm not going to jump to the conclusion that you're racist. I'm going to let you get the thought out. And then I'm going to try to either give you some information or point you to a source or help you understand a perspective, so that you're kind of more informed. But it's, and like I said, it annoys me. I actually got a video, brother, and I didn't tell you this earlier, that I haven't released yet. Okay. That's called, Should We Be Demonizing Racism? And I don't think we should, right? I think we gaslight racism too much, where people are afraid to have racial conversations. Do you believe that racism is a sin? I think that, so if we're talking about it from a biblical perspective, only biblical, I believe withholding love from anybody, which is a command from God, because of their color, the color of their skin, is a sin. Right. Okay. And so, like, from a Christian perspective, that's how I define racism, right? God said, love your neighbor. Right. And if you choose not to love somebody because of the color of their skin, and some people call it partiality, right, or whatever, then I feel like that is racism. And I cut that sword in both directions, whether you white, black, Asian. I know some black people you in Texas, it's some black people real racist against Mexicans. Oh, definitely. And I'm like, you racist. I'm glad you said, but see, I believe this is somewhat monumental. I don't know if your man Ruslan knew this about what you said, because again, you know, I had asked him the question, and I got a video queued up because I wanted to get. Oh yeah, I got to play the receipts, dog. I got to play receipts. You got receipts on me? I thought we would. All right. I don't care. Yeah, it's public. It's public. But here's my point. My point is, I asked Ruslan this question when he was on my live. I said, and you probably saw. Well, you know, you say you didn't watch. You don't really watch videos. Okay. So let me just do this then. I'm gonna go ahead and just answer the question. I mean, put the video up, and then that way you can see it for yourself. Let me go ahead and share the screen here, and let's do this. Share the screen, and then I'm going to do this one. All right, what I'm going to play first. Well, you know what? I'm gonna mess with you first, dog. Let me mess with you. Let me mess with you. let me mess with you real quick. I'm gonna read this real quick. Hold on. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. Here's what I'm gonna read something to you, and I want to get your honest thoughts about this. All right. So here's some statements that were made, and then I want to get your critique on this. Here we go. All right, now we talked about racism. I want to know what your thoughts are about this statement. Here it is right here.
black and white theology. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, now folks are going to respond by saying that learning from Christians of an African heritage is far different than learning from the participants in the Radical Reformation. Moreover, learning specifically from African American theologians is certainly not the same. Okay, sure, I'd agree. But let's face the hard truth. The white European Western society Christians are truly the ones who not only preserve Christian orthodoxy for everyone, including recapturing the Bible in the original languages. They are the ones who shaped the course of Protestant Christianity throughout the world, and specifically here in the United States. I don't mean to be dismissive of their contribution. I love when people say that, and then they put the butt clause in there. But African-American Christians are a small portion built upon the main foundation that just so happens to be, according to God's providence, a white.
What you doing, Saiko? What is you doing right now?
Let me finish, dog. a white, Western European English one. A seminary with a 3 or 4 year track designed to train men to as expositional preachers, must stay focused on the foundational matters, and that regrettably edit subjects others may believe are important. There is nothing, Roy, nothing racist about that. What say you, sir? What do you say about that statement there?
First of all, I'm saying everybody need to go get, you know what I'm saying, a copy of The Whitewashing of Christianity by Jerome Gay. And literally,
why don't you tell Jerome, do me a favor, why don't you tell Romy Rome to run me a copy? And then I'm gonna bring him on my live. Can you do that for me? Yeah, bet.
I'll get him to send you a physical copy. I'll FaceTime him when we get done. So because he looking for some place to have a conversation. Right. But and he literally has a chapter on that like exact statement. And it was actually a quote from
Bible Thumping Wingnut.
No, it was from We Got Answers. So like We Got Answers, or like BibleAnswers.com or whatever. Somebody had asked the question. Yeah, gotquestions.org. That's what it was.
Yeah.
He has a whole section of his book where somebody had like their response on gotquestions.org was basically what you just read to the question, is Christianity the white man's religion? Mm-hmm. And they gave essentially that answer, right? Like ignoring so many historical things. And when you have to preface or close with "that's not racist," then that's normally because it's racist, right? To call a religion that started and that was, you know, that grew and was edified in Northern Africa. Right? A European Western, like, it's disingenuous. It's, you know what I mean? It's disrespectful to the history. Right. Like the early church, right? Like the Constantinian leg and arm of Christianity was hundreds of years after Christianity had been founded. And there's been people throughout history, right, who were black, even in the US, right? When you look at the AME church, when you look at like, you know, Grimke and, you know, Crummell, and there are people, but like, you know, first of all, weren't allowed to read for a long time. So that, you know, that kind of delays scholarship when you're not allowed to be literate.
And all you gotta do is read Ogden's book, the African Christianity that shaped the Western mind. I mean, and I think though, right, I know even you, right, being a little bit more conservative, right, in your social views. Well, shouldn't all Christians be conservative?
We should be conservative. Okay. I'm just, you know, conserving the Lord's word. The political conservatism slide in.
That could be another conversation. That's gonna be another conversation.
But yeah, so man, but I think it's stuff like that, and that's what I love. Jerome said in his book, he was like, stuff like that contributes to lostness. Like you and I already know we got to contend with this whole concept of like the white man's religion and institutional racism, right? And the institutionalized black mind relying on white entitlements and liberalism in the, you know what I'm saying, to survive. And when you put stuff out there like that, that just isn't true. Like, what are you referencing? Like,
and I think also at the same time, I mean, it's a slap in the face of Ephesians 2:20, where the Bible says that the foundations is laid upon the apostles and the prophets, with Christ Jesus being the chief cornerstone. So man, in the foundation.
It was Middle Eastern, North African people last time I checked. But when you say you are the foundation.
Yeah. So now,
but you know what? It probably is true. They are the foundation of American Christianity, which is a far departure from what the disciples did anyway. So they can have credit for that. But I I don't know.
Let me ask you this. So needless to say, you take issue and take umbrage with that statement, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let me run this one to you. I'm about to mess you up, bro. This bear with me. I'm kind of enjoying it though.
You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna just let everybody know. He told me he ain't had no like little trick. Oh, let me.
This ain't no trick. And I also said if it's public, I'm gonna put that joint out.
I'm just saying he ain't provide me none of this before. You good, bro?
Yeah. So let me do this one here. I want to play this one, and then that way you can hear this one yourself. Now, make sure you get a good drink. I want you to spit it out over the screen when you hear this one, bro. All right. So this one gonna be rather rather interesting to say the least here. All right, here we go. Can you see that?
It's coming up now. There we go.
You got it? All right. Okay. Do you know who this gentleman is?
Nope.
All right. I'll tell you who he is later. Let me go ahead and run this. You ready?
Yeah.
You see the title? How to View the Flaws of the Reformers. You see that?
Yeah.
All right. I'm about to run it.
One of my favorite theologians in America is R.L. Dabney. He was a Presbyterian theologian, and I firmly believe that he would be remembered as America's greatest theologian ever, except that he got embroiled in the Civil War. He was a Southern Presbyterian. During the time of the Civil War, he was the chaplain to Stonewall Jackson. So he was actually in the military and fought for the South in the war. And when the South lost, he became embittered and never really got over it. And some of his later writings also are racist, just racist. And so much so that when the Banner of Truth published his collected writings on essays and stuff like that, it's called Discussions. It's actually my favorite set of books. Of all the books on my shelf, that's the one I would least like to lose, because there's some just brilliant material in there. But when Banner of Truth, it was originally 4 volumes, and when Banner of Truth picked it up and published it, they made it 3 volumes because they took out, there was so much racist material at the end that they had to take out. So they deleted half of volume 3 and most of volume 4 and put it in 3 volumes. And I look at Dabney and I think, what a shame. What a shame. I mean, he was a product of his times. And what a shame that he couldn't rise above that and see beyond that, because he understood doctrine and loved the scriptures and loved Christ. And I'm sure his level of spiritual maturity was far beyond mine. So I feel bad even criticizing him, but you have to step back and look at that and say, he, like all those reformers, was a flawed man. And sometimes our flaws outlive and sometimes even overshadow our good qualities. It's one of my fears, frankly, because I put a lot of stuff on the internet, and over the years, some of the things I've written on the internet have made people angry. And I hope, succeeding generations don't look back and say that the thing that stands out about me is that I was a, sarcastic badmouther. I recognize I have flaws just like those men.
Sir, you all right? You good? Hold on, let me see.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah, I muted because I was coughing. So
I thought you was cussing.
No, I was coughing. I'm like, let me put it on mute. That's why I'm trying to deal with this these allergies out here, man. But it's crazy. And again, man, and I'm really not trying to plug Jerome's book, but he's got a whole section called Product of the Culture. And that man almost just literally said the phrase that he was a product of his time. Right. So it's like, I can applaud and appreciate his theology and his doctrine. But then when there's parts of his character, and I guess with, some of the people, right, the difference between your orthodoxy and your orthopraxy, when I see through your writings that you had almost a vehement hatred towards Black people.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't no semen. No, he hated him. He definitely hated him.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm gonna pull them out the volumes, and the rest of the stuff you said was valid. Right. So it's like, it's like writing a book. Like, you put out a book on marriage, and then I find out you actually been divorced the whole time, and we're like, it's a real good book though.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not true, and it's just crazy, man. But and I mean, there's a lot of that, right? In the Puritans and the Reformers, and when it comes to race and some of their perspectives and how they were very much right openly for the dehumanization and the disrespect of the Imago Dei of people as long as they were not Caucasian. But it just gets excused, right? Which is funny, which again leads the lostness, because people see that and then they're like, see, that's why I don't rock with Christians, because right, it's unfortunate. That was his words. Like, this man was unfortunate and hated black folk and did stuff probably, right? Back then you were allowed to do some horrible things to black people if you didn't like them.
Yeah,
so,
and he was that's his favorite race. That's his favorite theologian. That's one of his favorite.
And so we keep in mind, right? And this is what we see in a lot of kind of like white Christian spaces, right? Is that, and I said it in one of my videos, America has always chose to compromise with racism. The American church, right? So it's like, it's not that bad. And the guy just said, he was like, yeah, he had slaves, but he wrote a really good book. And he had slaves, but that Declaration of Independence is on point. Like the church and America overall, honestly, and I would say you're starting to see, and it's still not there, but you're starting to see where the majority of the country, from a population perspective, especially the white majority population, is not okay with just letting things be racist, right? When you keep in mind that Strom Thurmond, who was a open segregationist, open separatist, was literally in office, I think, until like right before Obama got elected, or like in 2008. Like, he died at work, and that man was still for segregation and kept getting reelected year after year. Civil Rights Act passed, and for almost 40 years, this man got reelected in his city as a racial segregationist, completely against integration, and they still put him in office that entire time. But they were like, but he was a good man when he died, right? And it was like he did some good stuff. Your boy
Obama attended, a racist funeral that Biden had eulogized.
Well, first of all, you just called Obama my boy, and he's not.
Well, so. I'm just saying your boy. Just put it out there. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I mean, so I know you talking to the people. I'm respecting.
Yeah.
YouTube right now. I know you just triggered somebody in the comment section. Go tell him, whose funeral was he at? I don't know who funeral you talking about.
It was Joe Biden's mentor, and Robert Byrd is his name.
Okay.
And Robert Byrd was,
I used to live in Delaware, bro. So I know all of Joe Biden's racist past and the bills and stuff that he did to legislate.
Did you vote for him?
I did.
You voted for Biden, huh?
I did.
Can I just ask a question that we made? Let me pull over for a second. Let me pull over real quick. Put the flashers on. What was your biblical reason for voting for someone whose policies were diametrically opposed to the scriptures as a Christian?
Well, first of all of his policies are not diametrically opposed, right? There are policies in everybody's platform on the right or the left that are in opposition to biblical ideals, right?
Like so give me one from the right that would be in opposition to the scriptures. The platform, the policies, the beliefs.
Yeah, like I'm not a Republican, so I don't know the policies or the.
But no, you said both. Right? You said both left and right, so that would presuppose.
Yeah, I mean, even so, for instance, school, so I can use public school, for instance, okay. Right? Like trying to shift public education to voucher programs to give people choice is a benefit to middle class families, right? If you give someone a voucher to attend whatever school they want, but the children don't have actual transportation. And you're not.
Hold on. Okay. So can I ask a question? Whose fault is it that supply transportation? It's not the government's. It's not the government's responsibility to supply education in the first place. But they do, and they legislate. And I agree. Listen, I agree with that part. I agree that they do.
Yeah.
But it's not the government's responsibility to give you a ride to school.
It's not.
Okay. So
unless they make it a requirement, which they did, right? Like the Department of Education is established. The public school system is nationally and locally driven. My children are homeschooled. My children are educated in the classroom in my house. So
exactly. So that's my point. So I'm asking the question. So you said, so are you in opposition to school vouchers? Let me put it this way. Are you in opposition of parents having the right to decide where they want to send their children to be educated?
No, not at all. I think people should have that opportunity. But with that, I think you can't use that as an excuse to not make sure that the level of education afforded in public education is, again, equitable, right?
But they don't believe in equity. They don't believe in equity. They believe, number one, Democrat Party is ran by the teachers union. They run the schools and how they want those students to be locked in. And so my point is, if I'm just going by policies, Roy.
Yeah.
If this party says, Democrats Party says, no, you don't have a choice to where you're going to send your kids. We're going to tell you where to send your kids. And this party over here says, you have a right because you're the parent. You have the God-given authority and right to decide where and how you want your children to be educated. Which one aligns with the biblical premise?
But
is it or huh?
But what I'm saying is that you're putting you're talking about a biblical perspective for a secular organization. The government is not the church.
But the government is ordained by God. But we would agree that they're out of bounds in the things that they're doing. But what I am saying is that if you are allowing the government to decide where you can educate your children, that's unbiblical. But if a party is saying, well, wait a minute, the government it is responsible to us, we the people. We're supposed to be the representatives. It's supposed to be a constitutional republic. It's not supposed to be telling us how we are to educate our children, how we are to run our families, and that is going beyond its jurisdiction. So if this party is saying, well, you can't send your child over here, but you can send your child over there. It's kind of like with Pharaoh. You can only go so far to worship, but come back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I've never really seen a Democratic Party that's against people going, a Democratic Party against people trying to put, like, if I want to put my kid in private school, in Christian school or whatever, I can pay for that. That's money out of my pocket.
I agree. Right? I totally agree.
From an education perspective, and I don't necessarily care much for the teachers union either, but the one problem that I see is that when we go, we can't do both and. It always has to be either or. So it's either everyone says the public school system is flawed, the money isn't equally distributed. So then we say, then let everybody send their kids wherever they want to go, and then people can fix their own problem. But that doesn't solve the issue of underfunded schools, right? It doesn't solve the issue of parents who may not have the opportunity. And again, as a Christian, right, like I feel like doing unto the least of these, I don't want a child to have a poor education because his mother doesn't have transportation. Right, so that's not that child's fault. And but
who's responsible? I guess my question is, who's responsible then? Who's responsible for the education and upbringing of the child? Is it the state? Is it the church? Is it family?
It's a family, right? From a biblical perspective, that's what I believe, right? So. Exactly. But again, like the point, the government, right, is for the just and the unjust. It rains on us both alike. So I'm a Christian. I've got Christian principles. I got Christian values in my finances and the way I educate my children. But like the Muslim or the non-believer or the backslidden person, I'm just supposed to disregard their kids' education because their parents are making bad decisions.
Well, but then that goes back to responsibility then too, as well too. And I think that's another element that we miss in our culture.
I agree, right? And that's why I'm saying so if the government is going to offer a service of public education, which the reason public education is there is to try to allow to try to kind of level the playing field to a certain regard, to make sure people are getting the education that they need, right? I wish, I'm really, you could tell my kids are in public school. So and I did not become a public school teacher after working in public schools for 3 years. But I think it's a broken system, and a lot of it comes from funding. A lot of it has to do with responsibility. But the way that I think, and because most of my ministry is in impoverished communities, and that's where I grew up, like my heart, and then to a certain degree, my politics kind of play towards the least of them amongst us. Because honestly, everybody else, I feel, if you're a middle class, right, and you got a problem with where your kids are getting educated, and me and my wife just had this conversation with some friends of ours in Delaware, then take your kids somewhere else, right? But I know people who don't have that liberty, and I feel like it would be arrogant of me to be like, I don't care if, like, for instance, you know, I live in a very nice neighborhood, so, but I feel like I would be trifling. I'm like, I don't care what the quality of education is at the public school down the street from my house because my kids are at home, right? Like, other people's kids have to go to that public school, so I should care about the education that's being provided by the system that I'm funding with my taxes, right? I pay property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Our property taxes go to those schools, so I want those schools to be able to deliver a reasonable amount of a reasonable quality of education. So I think, and again, it's kind of both and. I like school choice and I like vouchers, but I don't think you can do that and ignore and not fix the funding issues we have with some of the more impoverished schools in communities that are poorer because the property value is lower.
So Jesus says the poor you always have with you. He didn't say the black poor, the white poor, the Hispanic poor. He just said poor. Yep. So we're to help the poor in any way we can. But at the same time as well, I believe the church's mission is not to be this soup kitchen. Now, if you want to do that, because we're talking about purpose, we're talking about what God has, established. But I believe also the issue when it comes to systemic injustice, systemic racism, whatever the term we want to use. I'm glad that both of us agree with the fact that it has to be proven, right? So you just saw, you heard and you read the clips and the video that I just posted, right, regarding what is racism and what would be prejudice or a racist statement, right? So then I want to put this one up because I'm going somewhere with the flow of this because I want to make sure that we're consistent. And I'm glad you said something else about letting the hammer or the sword swing on either side. If it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And we got to hold people accountable to it. So I'm definitely appreciating and agreeing with you up on that as well. So let me play this one because this is another video that I want to share with you and get your thoughts about it because I believe it's important and it's public. It's nothing private that's being put out here. This one is where is it? Oh, okay. This one here. Let me play this one.
Okay.
Where is it? Here we go. So just give me a minute. I'm trying to see if I can find it here. I thought I had it here. Okay, I'll play this one here. Let me do this one here. All right. Okay. Can you see that right there?
Yeah.
Okay. It says the white man CRT ancestral sin, Eric Mason woke church. This gentleman here, his name is Blake Wilson. Not sure if you know. Matter of fact, he's an author of this book. Let me show you. Matter of fact, you have you read Urban Apologetics yet?
No, it's on my shelf. I haven't read it yet though.
Okay, so this one, so you already have. So Eric Mason, of course, he authored it. He has co-authors on there as well. So, but this is Blake Wilson. So let me play this one here and let you hear what he said. What I just do with it? Oh, here it is. Duh. All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right.
Race isn't in the Bible, right? When we're talking about race,
Okay,
because
stop real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone says that, and they say, man, it's talking about nations, it's not really talking about race and or color. I want y'all to get on your plane, get your ticket, because you secured the bag, and go to Africa and look at what the people look like in Libya, look what they look like in Egypt, and look at what they look like in Ethiopia. And then you just say, okay, when you come back, take a picture of them, and then come back and show it to the person, because the person's a liar. It's false. See, understand, like, the white man is so smooth. The white Christian man. I'm going to come up with CRT and, not come up with it, but I'm going to start addressing this and saying that it's holding me guilty. Therefore, I've been released at the cross of my guilt, and therefore we ought not even discuss things from the past. See, the white man's trying to erase responsibility of some of his ancestral sins. But if you read Luke 11:45-52, Jesus Christ put responsibility of ancestral sins on the current generation. Jesus did that. But see, the white man doesn't expect you to read, Joaquin, and anybody else on here. He doesn't expect you to read. Why? Because you're still that black dude that we put in the slave ship coming through urine and feces. I don't respect you as a spiritual, intellectual, theological equal. I don't. And that's why they tried to shut Eric Mason down. Negro, as long as you were writing that black men need to be fixed with manhood restored, that's good. But once you start writing woke church, and once you start writing, what is it, urban apologetics, we didn't ask you to be a theologian.
And I've had a conversation.
So that's what I wanted you to see that. What? Let me stop it right here. My fault. All right. So what are your thoughts about that, dog?
One, anytime I hear a message that's like the white man has said, it's kind of actually hard for me to continue listening because you're not actually identifying a group or a system that you're addressing a problem with. So that's one, but I think it's, you know what I mean? I think it's hyperbole for entertainment, maybe is the best way I could, right? Like you try to make very inflammatory statements and people say this stuff online, but there's no substance in, like, what can I argue with that? He didn't state a fact. He didn't reference anything. He just, the white man did this, the white man did that. Who is that? What organization are you talking about? Are you speaking of conventions, right? And then you want to narrow the scope to the Christian white man. But I don't like there. To me, there's nothing there to go off of. Like I would dismiss that just like the other guy's YouTube video, right? Like it almost sounded like he was trying to defend Dr. Mason, but didn't bring up any specific attacks towards Dr. Mason. So like, I don't really know what he was trying to get to other than saying something that would be like provocative and inflammatory, right? And then just put that CRT, they're trying to attack the black man who wrote a book, you know what I mean, mentality, which I don't know where that's coming from. Like I haven't seen like Christianity Today put out an article, right? Or Charisma Magazine saying that, Eric Mason is the devil, right? I know Jeff Durbin said some stuff at a conference about woke church, but that wasn't tied to that book. And that wasn't from like the mainstream Christian or largely white evangelical Christian organization. So I think it's provocative and inflammatory for a reason. And for that reason, I think it's nonsense.
Do you think it being a racist statement that he made toward white people, that they have ancestral sin? Would that be considered as a false accusation against white people?
I think it's a false generalized statement, right? Like, ancestry is ancestry. You can't group all white people in together. They're not all the same. They're not genetically the same. They're not ethnically the same, right? There are people who immigrated to America after World War II whose family had no tie to slave ownership, right? And all this other stuff. And that's why I said when you talk about the white man, right? Like, and we talked about this early when we talked about race, right? Race is a social construct. And he tried to dismiss the fact that, the Bible talks about people groups and ethnicities, not race the way that we see it in America, right? In Africa, everybody's dark skinned, but they don't all call themselves black.
Right.
They call themselves Nigerian or Negritian or right. Like they call themselves based on their ethnicity, their culture, or the tribe where they come from. So that, So I think
and the reason why I'm bringing that up though, Roy, because again, I believe that as Christians, when we see things or hear things that can create or cause division in the body of Christ, then it is our responsibility to call it out. Just like we're talking about racism. If racism is once we know that racism has emerged and we have the facts that a person is being racist or violating the second greatest commandment, which is loving our neighbor as ourselves, then we need to deal with it. We need to call them out. We need to expose it. We need to call them to repentance, and we need to warn people not to associate or not to, fellowship with these kind of people until they repent. So this man is a co-author of a book that's blasting white people and saying that white people, because of the color of their skin, have ancestral sin because of what their ancestors did. That is so anti-Ezekiel 18, because we know that the Bible makes it clear that the sins of the father is not passed down to the son. Each man is going to be held responsible for their own sin. Now, there can be consequences. We understand that. But when people say that they're talking about ancestral sin, and then you have people like Eric Mason, who says that black people cannot be racist. So he contradicts or conflicts with what you're saying.
But again, but also I've read his books and I know how he defines racism, right? He's one of the people that will use the definition of racism, that it's prejudice plus power. So the reason he makes the statement that black people can't be racist, and he doesn't say black people can't be impartial, that they can't be bigoted, but in using the definition in the context of power, right? Because like a lot of these discussions are about systems, right? So like the question is, tell me a system that black people control that they can keep white people out of. And there's a lot of people who take that same kind of position, and it depends on how you're defining it, right? So like, again, I'm, and again, just because of my occupation, but right, like I can't keep somebody out of an education system. So that's where a lot of people who make that statement. And honestly, at one point in my life, I used to make the same statement until I kind of broadened my definition of racism and understanding it, especially being somebody who's in a position of power, right? And when you take it out of like these large global countryside systems and you take it down, right? And that's why I used the example that I did, Seiko, when I said, can a classroom be a system, right? Because if a classroom can be a system, then a black teacher can be racist, right? Like, but it depends on where you're defining that kind of demographic. If the system has to be like the state government or the federal government, black people don't run the federal government. So black people can't make the federal government racist, but it depends on where you're boxing that system. And a lot of these discussions, when we talk about systemic racism, people are normally talking about like, and you mentioned it in your title, institutional. So they're like state government, federal government, and it's like the criminal justice system, the education system, the financial system. But I don't use that definition because I'm an applications engineer. So I like high theory and intellectual theory is cute, but I need something applicable and practical. So that's why I take it down to tangible systems. And when you bring it to a system that's that small, right, where the person in power doesn't have to be a president, an elected official, a CEO, right? It can be a teacher, it can be an individual. Then that kind of, in my opinion, like that view of it kind of shifts. But not specifically to Dr. Mason, but a lot of people who I've read and that I've seen that make that statement, they're normally referring to like the federal government, the criminal justice system, because that's what we're saying. You say the criminal justice system is racist, and then people be like, well, black people are racist too. And I'm like, but we're talking about the criminal justice system. So show me something comparable that black people run where they either, disproportionately or discriminate against white people in similar size systems. So and so I'm not disagreeing, and I agree with you, right? I think black people can be racist, and that's a generalized statement to make that causes a lot of confusion and division, but you've got to define the system, and they're normally talking about larger systems. Like,
but does it have to matter if it's not a large system? Because there are black people in positions of power. In fact, let me just I'm gonna read a quote. This is from Ibram X. Kendi. This is what he says, quote, and this was in 2019. And he was interviewed on CNN. And the article is titled, "Sure, Black people can be racist too." And the question was raised, why do you think Black people can be racist as well? You heard the argument that people of color can't be racist because they don't have institutional power. And this is what Ibram X. Kendi says, quote, "So generally white people say I'm not racist, and Black people say I can't be racist. There's a similar form of denial that is essential to the life of racism itself. You have Black people who believe that they can't be racist because they believe that Black people don't have power, and that's blatantly not true. Every single person on earth has the power to resist racist policies and power. We need to recognize that there are Black people who resist it, and there are some who do not because of their own anti-Black racism. And then you have Black people, a limited number, who are in policy-making positions and use those policy-making decisions, to institute or defend policies that harm Black people. If those people were white, we would be calling them what they are, racists. If they're black, they're no different. They're racist. End of quote. So this is what Ibram X. Kendi says. Now, I know he ain't a Christian, but he's speaking against the narrative of Eric Mason and of others who would say that black people can't be racist because racism involves power. And my thing is, where's book, chapter, and verse on that? Because we are to define our terms that prejudice or racism is a discrimination against a person based on the color of their skin, or thinking that one person is better than another ethnic group or race is better than another race, then that's sin. That's James 2. So we can't say that. So it's for me, it's an indictment against any professing believer when you have unbelievers saying, well, wait a minute, hold it. Black people got power too. Matter of fact, I got a list of Congress folk that have been in positions of power just after slavery.
Yeah,
in Congress. I mean, I'm saying they've been in positions of power even up to this present day. So I don't think we do justice per se, quote unquote, to individuals when we add definitions to things that don't mean what it actually says. So if I'm telling a person that you can be a white person, yeah, you can be racist because you have power. Well, I know a lot of white people that, quote unquote, don't have power and they live in trailer parks. Now, I would disagree in this context that, like Ibram X. Kendi says, all of us have power because we have influence. It's just at greater levels and greater realms than others. But every last one of us do. Jesus says, to whom much is given, much is required. Then that's power. That's influence. So I push back on that. And I got to play this video for you, dog. I got to play it for you, bro, because I want you to hear what Eric Mason said. I got to let you hear it because, again, he said it. And when I asked Ruslan the question, he was hemming and hawing and it all depends on what is. I'm like, Bill Clinton, can you miss me with the is? No, he said it. This is what he said. This is what he meant. And so it's on video. So let me just run this real quick and let you hear it and let Eric say what he has to say out of his own mouth. Let me see if you got it right here. Can you see that?
Yep.
All right, let me run it for you.
Racism is prejudice, discrimination, antagonism directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. So racism is different than prejudice, if you will. Prejudice, if you will, is a bit different because it's biased or preconceived opinion about someone. So prejudice is the ability to have a disposition towards someone, but racism is the ability to enact your power based on your prejudice against someone. Anybody can be prejudiced. Only a few people can be racist. And so racism is the application of your power to enforce your prejudice on people that you want to enforce it on. That means whites have to stop calling black people racist. You call a black person prejudiced, but you can never call a black person racist, because the difference between me and you is I can call you whatever crazy racial slur I want. I can not treat you a particular way, but racism's a bit different. It's me using my structural capacity in connection to power to enforce my prejudice to cut things off from you. But that's why I'm glad.
That's what. Let me see if I can stop it. Hold on. Where's it at?
Because if it was based on human systems, nothing would happen. But no system on this planet and no people on this planet
there we go.
Can come against the
Did I stop it?
power of God through Jesus.
I can still hear it. So
yeah, I'm gonna stop it. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. There we go. All right, there we go. My fault. So again, he says that. And then he also says that he can call a white person any kind of racial slur that he wants. Well, where's that at? I mean, that's so anti-James 3. You can't just say whatever.
He was saying that in context of the definition of prejudice, but he was saying even in calling somebody a prejudicial term based on the way that he was laying it out, that he wouldn't define that as racist. And again, like, I don't agree with that statement. Right. And it's and in the same regard, like, you just quoted Ibram Kendi and you're like, he's not a Christian. And I know there's a lot of stuff in How to Be Anti-Racist, which is down here on my bookshelf, that you nor I would agree with in application. But he said something that has a valid point, and you pull that information in. So, and, you know, and again, I don't know who he was speaking to in that audience. Right. But it goes back to what I said before. Right. He's talking about, you know, Black people don't have institutional power to be able to deny somebody so that prejudice can't be put into action. So I don't know what system he was envisioning in his mind when he said that. Right. But again, I have a different perspective because I'm an executive. Right. Like, I have a position of power, and I personally have the ability to decide the careers, the direction, the salaries, the benefits, right, the livelihood of hundreds of people every day. And I could, in my position of power, choose to not hire white people, right? To only hire Black people, to not hire Hispanics, to not hire people who aren't Christian, right? Like, I could choose to use any of my own personal biases or prejudices in that respect. So, like, because of that, and because that's the way that I look at a system, right? So I look at my organization that I run, that, you know, that provides a very good lifestyle for hundreds of people, as a system. But I run that and I control that system. And I would even say, like, to the local level, right? Like, he gets to control who he hires at his church. So
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I'm glad, because I was going to ask you.
Person that you don't agree with. But and to a certain degree, right? It's like, and I don't want to make any assumptions, but, like, I also feel like there's like a lack of, and I don't want to say a lack of acknowledgement or like, you know, and it's and like a lot of the kind of, I want to say conservative, but I don't want to use a political term, but like, a lot of conservative people have this view or this critique of Black people that we're like victims all the time, right? That, like, it's, oh, woe is me, like, I need an entitlement, I need a handout, I need something. Like, we're devoid of any individual power to be able to provide for ourselves, to change our circumstances, to overcome obstacles. So even if you put me in a ditch when everybody else is on level ground and you fill the ditch with rocks and water, right? Like, I can still manage to get out of that ditch, and I can still manage to run you down and even pass you if I put that effort in. You know what I mean? And so I don't like the idea that Black people are powerless, because we're not. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, shortly after the Reconstruction, right, we had the biggest influx of Black people in politics in the South until you had the Dixiecrats, right? Like, look at people in a matter of a generation, right, that became educated, that became inventors after we weren't allowed to read for 300 years. Like, that's a ditch you had to crawl out of. And then we got Carter G. Woodson giving Henry Ford directions on how to run an automobile plant. You see what I'm saying? So, like, I don't like and I don't know if it's the victimization or like taking too much pride in the inferiority that's inherent to like Black identity in the racial social construct. And then it's like, and I want to go. So, but, like, you know, that's not conservatives.
That's not conservatives that believe those are liberals. Those are Democrats that hold to that view. That's not conservatives.
And it is, and I'm not gonna lie, right? There are a lot of liberal people who feel that way, which is why I don't kind of put myself in that camp, right? I use this illustration to talk about, like, politics, that I said I feel like it's like it's Joe Exotic versus, like, Carol, whatever the lady's name is. So I feel like, and I get to have a lot of conversations with people in different economic stratuses. The way that people on either side look at Black people, and this is just my opinion, the liberals are like, we got to help Black people because we can't help themselves. And then a lot of times the stuff that I get from conservatives is like, I need to tell Black people how to live their lives so that they can do better for themselves, because we know how to do it because we've done well. So let us be so it's the difference between, like, an animal circus and a conservatory, right? So I'm either using you for, like, my entertainment. You can make me money. You can work for me. You can benefit me, or I want to put you in, like, this sanctuary because I think you're going to hurt yourself if I just let you move and operate in your own power. And I don't like either, which is why, like, they're two wings of the same bird. And, you know what I'm saying? I follow the lamb. So I don't really care what either one of them are doing. And so even when you talk about politically, like, when I vote, like, I don't vote straight down the line, right? It depends on what is your job? What is your job requirement? What are you required to do? Who are you going to hire? Who are you going to fire? Who are you going to put in office? And then I look at those institutions and those organizations and drive it that way. But yeah, I like I said, I don't disagree with you. It bothers me. And that's why I do agree with like some of the Black conservative talks, because they're always like, we gotta own ourselves. But like,
do you agree with Pat? You agree with Candace Owens?
I mean, she said some stuff that she said some stuff on education that I've heard before she started being like a political pundit, like some of her earlier content I've seen from her nonprofits, but I don't watch politically charged rhetoric because I don't care about politics. So I don't really watch those kind of debates, but I looked at some of her information where she was talking about education and was speaking to Congress, and like she had valid points that she was making. And I'm like, I don't have to agree with the approach.
I guess my question is, if we're Christians, and you mentioned
Candace Owen and Ibram Kendi, and both of them are not Christians, by the way.
Yeah, but you also mentioned MLK and Malcolm X and BLM in one of your conversations with Sherry last year.
With who?
Sherry.
With Sherry. Yeah.
Sherry, yeah. I mean, so you had mentioned Malcolm X and MLK. They weren't Christians, and BLM is definitely not a Christian institution, and they have done more to destroy the Black community than a racist white person today could do. And so I'm saying, if that's your logic. And you can check the video, brother. I've never advertised or endorsed Black Lives Matter as an organization. And clearly say I don't respect them. I just want to make sure, because you threw it out there as a soundbite, and they can go watch them. I have a video. They can watch it right here. Black Lives Matter. I have a video on Black Lives Matter that they can go watch that clearly says I don't support the organization. Okay, it's like I want you to explain to me this then, because here's the video. Here's the video here. I want you to explain to me what you meant by what you said, because that's, again, it's about clarity. Yeah. Because I want to make sure, because if it's out here and you said it, you made some statements about Candace Owens that I believe was slanderous. You and the sister did. I believe that was misrepresenting an individual, a fellow image bearer of God, regardless of whether or not she is a Christian or not. But then that same consistency had to be given across the board. So I want to get your thoughts about what you said in your own video with the interview with her and Cherie. So let me go ahead and put this joint up here. And here we go. Dear White Church. That's the title of the video. And the question was raised regarding Candace Owens. What did y'all think about Candace Owens? That's you right here on the right? Ain't that you? Make racism illegal? Okay, I want to make sure I ain't trying to profile you, but it looks like you. All right, here we go.
She sent it through Facebook and Messenger, so I'll go ahead and read it. But she basically said, I have a serious question for you. How do you deal with someone who wants to use Candace Owens as a positive example or a different way of looking at things going on? She says, I have no idea how to talk to people about it. Does this question make sense? Woo! It makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
So we probably should explain who Candace Owens is first.
You can do that.
All right. Well, Candace Owens she's a speaker, political commentary person-ish, but she's not really a politician. She's tied up in organizations like Turning Point and very, very right-wing organizations that don't really have the best reputations, to be quite honest with you. And she has an origin story. And so how I would answer this to my friend who put this in, I would say, first you need to know Candace Owens, yes, she's a Black woman. So she's a Black woman. She's also the Black woman who said that George Floyd was not a hero. He was a criminal, and
he wasn't.
Stop celebrating him. I mean, she says all kinds of polarizing things, and she's a conservative right wing. Not to say that you can't be a conservative right wing, but the things she says are very polarizing and very, very, very disrespectful and lack compassion and, quite honestly, lack facts. She makes up her own narratives. Yeah. So here's what you need to know about Candace Owens before you get on the Candace Owens train. Dear White Church loves Candace Owens because she's the Black girl that will say all the things that basically say that racism isn't even real, which is kind of what she believes. So here's what happened. She was a young girl in high school. Here's her origin story. So you need to know this. She was a young girl in high school. She was dating a guy and some white kids in her class. I have a feeling it was a white kid because I don't know why white kids would care this much about her boyfriend. But anyway, she's with this guy. She's on a date. Her phone keeps blowing up. And she gets off the date. She looks at her phone messages, and it's all these hate messages saying we're gonna hang you, stay away from our men, and all this stuff about just her being a nigger, basically. Okay. And
ladies and gentlemen, just bear with me, y'all, because it's not too long, but I want to give the full context. I want Pastor Roy to respond in the context of the conversation regarding the question that was raised with Candace on. So just bear with me on this portion of the video.
Death threats. Well, she didn't know what to do with this. She was a young girl. She was in class, and the teacher was talking about racism, and she just casually said, "Oh, that happened to me." And the teacher says, "That happened to you? What happened?" And she explains these death threats she got on her phone from her classmates. He was like, "That's a big deal. You need to go to the principal's office and we need to talk about this and get the school counselor involved." They get the school counselor involved. They listen to the messages, and they start to figure out who these kids are. Well, these kids were some white kids who were kids of politicians, and they identify them. And then the federal government gets involved, and it becomes this whole thing. And she becomes now the Black girl who's a victim of hate crimes in her community. She didn't ask for this. She was just trying to enjoy her best life as a teenager, which is true. But it really impacted her. She goes on to college. She wants to leave that behind. She doesn't want to be a victim. She was hoping it didn't follow her around, but she was so traumatized by what happened. She became an alcoholic and severely depressed. She goes on to say that she started doing yoga and had a transformative experience during yoga that basically said, I can reframe my narrative, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to pick myself up by the bootstraps, and I'm going to rewrite my life. I am not a victim. So she reframes her whole story, says what happened to me wasn't a racist act. They were just kids being kids. They didn't mean anything. And I can have control over my destiny. And from there, she got on this whole narrative of, it is how you think about it. It is what you think. It is what you make it. Well, she uses that narrative in all kinds of complex racial things that really you just can't reframe, mass incarceration out of the reality of our history,
out
right?
of the context, yeah.
Right. You can't reframe slavery. You can't reframe segregation and redlining, right? You can't but she, in her mind, thinks you can just reframe it all. And conservatives, they love that narrative because it takes them off the hook. Like, they don't have to repent and do all that stuff we've been talking about, right? So that's who Candace Owens is, and she is she's I don't know.
Yeah, and but this is my thing, dear white church. And Cherie sounds better when it comes from Cherie when she says dear white church. But first of all, she's not Christian. So when you just told her origin story, right? Her renewed mindset, her new focus on how to channel her trauma into more productive things where she takes responsibility for her own life. This is not a Christian person. So the thing that I found amazing is, why are all of these Christians quoting her, right? Like, this is the equivalent of like Black people who want to use Umar Johnson or Farrakhan or Reza Islam or whatever. Like, you just reach out for somebody who agrees with what you say, even though they're not actually aligned with what you claim you believe. This is when you are publicly displaying your double-mindedness. Because why are you going to a secular source to try to justify something you think is a righteous position?
Well, you already know why, because Republican equals Christian. Republican equals Christian.
It is, right? And that's the thing. But even when people say that they're not Christian, right? Candace Owens does not claim to be a Christian, but she speaks on behalf of Republicans. Now she can be a proxy for Christian thought. And I was thinking about this today, and I said, right, like, and I'm gonna take it to, and we were talking about Black women earlier, right?
Yes.
Every Black woman I know has experienced some form of sexual harassment or abuse. So if I want to know the opinion, right? Like, why I can probably find one woman who said she's never had a wrong kind of advance, and she's never, or I can listen to the overwhelming evidence of the majority of the people that I've interacted with who say that this is their experience, right? That misogyny is real and sexism is real, and boys and men aren't taught boundaries, and they're always on the defense, or I can let Amber Rose be the spokesperson for women. You see what I'm saying? So, like, to me, like, the Candace Owens correlation is like, now Amber Rose wanting to criticize people for slut shaming people who want to walk around half naked, being the voice of women. So, like, instead of Michelle Obama, let me get Amber Rose to talk to all the children. Like, that's the equivalent of like trying to get, Black feeling or compassionate Black descriptions from like Candace Owens, right? When she's being paid, right? Amber Rose makes her money in a certain way.
Yep.
right? Candace Owen makes her money in a certain way. And everybody always wants to say follow the money when we're talking about Black Lives Matter protest and George Soros, right?
Yeah.
Follow the money. Like, she is being paid to represent an idea. And the fact that people would use her as kind of a counter to, like, well, what I say can't be racist if a Black person says it.
That's right.
And that's what it is. Like, she reads the script of racist political propaganda so that it has a Black face. So Candace Owen is racism in blackface.
That's the part I wanted to hear. I wanted to get your thoughts about that, bro. Because that's a very incendiary statement, I would think. You know, what is your response to that, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's incendiary. It's illustrative and descriptive, right? Like, we know what blackface is, right? Blackface was white minstrel theater, but they were painted black. And it was a continuation to the statement that I had just made, which is the fact that people take like some of the comments that if a white pundit or political correspondent said it, and even to your earlier point, it'd be like, that was racist. You can't say that, you're white. And then, like, you know, and the other thing, like, you know, her organization gets funded kind of out of nowhere. She gets kind of pulpitted by Trump, right? And gets provided a platform. And then she's regurgitating this stuff that people have been saying for years. But like, now,
I mean, what did she say? Well, I guess, what did she say that was wrong or sinful that you would charge her with a statement like that being a pastor? I mean, you saying that Candace Owen is racism in blackface. For one,
making very broad, out of context statements about the fact that, like, issues, and we were actually talking about a very specific Candace Owen video, and I don't remember because the question came from a viewer that sent us the video that she got in her inbox. So the video that we were talking about, it was basically Candace Owen was talking about, like, you know, all the problems in the Black family are because of the absence of Black fathers. That's it. That's a relatively true statement, but it's not an absolutely true statement, right? So there's a lot of sweeping statements that she makes that all the problems in our community are because of absent Black fathers, or they're because of the the focus on the nuclear Black family and things of that nature. And so
she said that's the main problem. That she said that's one of the contributing factors. Because I've heard her say that it's a contributing factor.
And I don't remember what video it was specifically, but in that video, they were very kind of broad, right? Like, I knew what she was referring to, but it was a contributing factor. It was kind of like very damning statements, especially, and a lot of them were towards Black men and the absence of Black men and how that's the cause.
But how is it? But how's that a lie? How is that a lie? And how's that not I mean, if the statement is true, and it is
true. Right, like the assumption that Black men are absent in their children's lives is statistically not true.
No. If you're not there, if you're not in the home, Roy, because we know that a father's presence in the home has greater impact than them being outside of the home.
And what demographic of men spend more time with their children than any other demographic?
We're not talking about demographics. We're talking about the home structure. We're talking about how a father has impact and influence when his presence is there on a everyday or consistent basis. I'm not talking about where they coming over to visit every weekend or every other weekend. I'm talking about what the word of God tells us and how we are to raise and rear our children. And since we are a minority and we make up 13% of the population and we have over 70% of our mothers raising our children, we can't sit here and say that does not take a disproportionate effect on the Black family, because it does. So my question, bro, is how is it that she can be chided or be slammed for making a general statement, but I just played you clips of Eric Mason. I played you clips of Blake Wilson. You heard the clip of Phil Johnson. You read the statement that I showed you at the beginning of our talk, and you came at those with the exception of Eric and Blake. You kind of like soft shoot it a little bit, bro. And so I'm saying
I thought they were both wrong. So what? How did I disagreed with their opinion?
No, but you disagreed with their opinion, but you didn't come at them with the same veracity and verbosity that you came at Candace Owen. You called this woman you call this woman racist in blackface. I mean,
in blackface. That was, and again, it was a continuation of the statement that I just made, which was she's being platformed to regurgitate things that other people on the right were saying, but when they were saying them, they were getting called racist. So they have a black person regurgitating the same thing to kind of skirt around that. And that's
would you call me black?
I'm in no way saying, right? I said it was racism in blackface. I'm not talking about the validity of the statement or anything else. I said the people who were right, those same ideas were proposed before. And it goes to our earlier point, right? Is it really racist or is it not? But those same points have been brought up by white men in the past, and they were called racist. They were canceled for saying the same thing. And then now we've got a black woman being platformed, right? Who came out of nowhere, who previously had no association with the Trump campaign. And now even the administration is giving her the opportunity to speak to Congress when there's, you know what I mean? And then she's being put out there. And that's why I used that illustration. I wasn't trying to be like disrespectful, right? I said it was racism in blackface using that illustration because I felt like they were regurgitating the same information, but they felt like they had protection in letting a black woman say it because she can't be called racist when they presented the same arguments. And again, whether, disagree on the details of it or whatever, but when white men present those same arguments, they are called racist. So then when she got put out front, that was my point. Like you're getting her to say the same thing that you were saying. And
why are you saying that they're getting? Why do you believe that they're getting her? That seems to be that you're ascribing somebody's motivations to be something that we don't have the evidence and facts to. That's my point. We had talked about the beginning.
And again, the evidence and facts. And that's what I said. If you go and look at Candace Owens' platform before she got involved in politics, her platform was not about the absence of black fathers in the home, right? She talked about education. She had a website dedicated to bullying. Right. It wasn't literally until the Trump campaign helped her found Turning Point USA that all of this information started coming out. So I'm talking about the shift in her direction that was specifically tied to her association with the political campaign that seemed to actually be kind of a step away from the things that she was trying to focus on, which I thought were great. Like bullying is a wonderful. She had a lot of stuff about education that she was pushing. And all of that went in completely different directions. She wasn't involved in politics at all until she was kind of platformed because she came out of nowhere, right?
How does that is that wrong? I guess my question is, does that make it wrong that she said that she's making these statements? Because it seemed like to me, it's just like you're ascribing something like as though she doesn't have a mind of her own, or that she cannot agree to something that is true. So why would she have to be considered racism? And matter of fact, whether a person that's white said it, the question is, biblically speaking, is it true? Can we look at our culture and look at our people and say that what we see going on as a people is not a problem? It would be disingenuous if we say, no, or are we saying, well, no, you can't say that unless you're part of this group, or you can't say that unless you're part of this. And I'm saying it doesn't matter who it is. The question or the statement should be, if it's true, then the Bible commands us to be aware of, to think on these things. Philippians 4, we're to hold fast that which is true. 1 Thessalonians 5:22 and 5:21-22. So we're to see what the information is, run it through the grid of the scriptures, look at our lives, look at the situations and say, okay, you know what? According to God's design, this is how the family is supposed to be. According to God's design, this is what sexuality is to be. According to God's design, this is what God has said about babies. Babies are not accidents. So therefore, if babies are not an accident, I don't have the right to support policies or support things that will annihilate those that are made in the image of God because of a political agenda. And I'm saying for too many of us who profess to be Christians, we have an unbiblical worldview when it comes to issues affecting the black community. We rather talk about Trump or rather talk about Biden. And I'm saying, okay, what do these policies that these men or these candidates or individuals represent? So if I say something that is true, then I shouldn't be lambasted or should be attacked by being called a sellout or being called, Uncle Ruckus. You actually, bro, you called this sister Auntie Ruckus in this video. You don't think that was a slanderous statement? You don't think that was an attack on this woman's character, bro?
I mean, that was a shot at Candace Owen. It was a joke, yes, and I guess you could say it was an inappropriate joke. So yeah, I'll give you that. Like,
yeah, I mean, because that's my point is that we talk about influence, we talk about power, we talk about what we are, what we are to represent. So if a person is saying something or doing something because we don't like it, then I don't believe we have the right to number one, lie on them. Candace Owens has never said racism does not exist. So Cherie, I want to mispronounce her name because I know people mispronounce my name, but yeah, the sister slandered this woman. She never said that. So there seems to be this perception of individuals because we don't agree with them, then that gives us carte blanche to attack them. And as Christians, we're called to a higher standard. As Christians, we're not to bring false charges against our neighbor. That's not loving at all. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was my concern, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts about it because again, it was said publicly. It was about an individual, and if we don't, lovingly say, hey man, look, here's what you said in this video. You care to comment on it? You care to bring some clarity, or you care to repent for what you said about this? Because I believe that again, you have influence. I have influence. You have followers. I have followers. And so when we make these statements about individuals, a lot of people, let's just be real, let's keep it a buck. A lot of people do not really do their homework. They rather gravitate to personality instead of saying, well, you know what? Let's look at the positions and what these people are saying. And if I say something unbiblical and if I say something wrong, then you as a fellow brother in Christ have the right to call me upon it, just like Paul did with Peter in Galatians too. So I just think that when we have these issues, man, we talk about conservatives, like I know you said it, you don't really talk about conservatives, but in a sense we do, because this is where we are. I just believe that we need to have a biblical worldview regarding that. That's all.
And I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? And I take that. And so, and like I said, with that, right, my thing was there were a lot of those statistics she references, right? When we talk about fatherness and what the biggest issues are in the Black community, all of this stuff has been researched. It's been thoroughly researched, right? So the people who came to that conclusion before and were proven via research, and people who challenged what they said, who happen to be white men, right? Like a lot of and that's my point. A lot of these talking points have never been proven by anybody, right? They're contributing factors that, like, and the whole thing, like the absence of the Black father in the home is the most like detrimental thing to the Black community.
But it has been proven, Roy. It has been proven, bro.
But
it's been proven by where? I got the information right here.
You know
CDC,
what I'm saying?
you got the CDC has proven it. You have. I mean, matter of fact, I'll read some to you. It's right here. Racism responsible for today's Black problems. They got this one from Walter Williams. I have the Black family is struggling, and it's not because of slavery. Let me just read this one. The number one problem among Blacks is the effects stemming from a very weak family structure.
Wait, hold on one second. Like, are you reading research from the CDC, or are you reading someone's book?
I'm reading the research. Yes, do you know what Walter Williams is?
I don't know who Walter Williams is. You just said the CDC, and then you're referencing Walter Williams. I don't think Walter Williams works.
I'm giving you one source. CDC mentions it, and Walter Williams also cites the CDC source in it as well. So that's what I'm quoting. The number one problem faced among Blacks is the effects stemming from a very weak family culture. Children from fatherless homes are likelier to drop out of high school, die by suicide, have behavioral disorders, join gangs, commit crimes, and end up in prison. They are also likelier to live in poverty-stricken households. But is the weak Black family a legacy of slavery? In 1960, just 22% of Black children were raised in single-parent families. 50 years later, more than 70% of Black children were raised in single-parent families. According to the 1938 Encyclopedia of Social Sciences, that year, 11% of Black children were born to unwed mothers. Today, about 75% of Black children are born to unwed mothers. The bottom line is that the Black family was stronger the first 100 years after slavery than during what would be the second 100 years. At one time, almost Black families were poor, regardless of whether one or both parents were present. Today, roughly 30% of Blacks are poor. However, two-parent families, Black families rather, are rarely poor. Only 8% of Black married couple families live in poverty. Among Black families in which both husband and wife work full-time, the poverty rate is under 5%. poverty in black families headed by single women is 37%. The undeniable truth is that neither slavery nor Jim Crow nor the harshest racism has decimated the black family the way the welfare state has. In every census from 1980 to 1954, blacks were either just as active or more than whites in the labor market. During that earlier period, black teen unemployment was roughly equal to or less than white teen unemployment. As early as 1900, the duration of black unemployment was 15% shorter than that of whites. Today is about 30% longer. Would anyone suggest that during earlier periods that there was less racial discrimination? What goes a long way toward the explanation of yesteryear and today are various labor laws and regulations promoted by liberals and their union allies that cut off the bottom rungs of the economic ladder and encourage racial discrimination. Labor unions have also a long history of discrimination against blacks. Frederick Douglass wrote about this in his 1874 essay titled, quote, "The Folly, Tyranny, and Wickedness of Labor Unions," end quote. And Booker T. Washington did so in his 1913 essay entitled, quote, "The Negro and Labor Unions." To the detriment of their constituents, most of today's black politicians give unquestioning support to labor laws pushed by unions and white liberal organizations. The most damage done to black Americans inflicted by those politicians, civil rights leaders, and academics who assert that every problem confronting blacks is a result of the legacy of slavery and discrimination. That's a vision that guarantees perpetuity of the problems. And so that's just one, bro. What I'm saying is the data is there, but the question is, do we believe it? And all we have to do is just look at our families. Just look at the black family. Can we honestly say that the black family, with what we have now, with all the technology, all of the opportunities, all of the benefits in this country, in America right now, there's two black men right now conversing with each other on a computer screen. You know what I'm saying? And we are living in the comfort of our homes. We talk about all these blessings that we have that God has sovereignly given to us. Are we still acting as though we're still living in the Jim Crow South, or in the Jim Crow or the Reconstruction era, where we have to ask for rights, that we have to now ask to be treated as men? No, I don't see that.
Yeah, and I agree, right? And I kind of said that earlier. I don't like the victimization of we don't have power. So in everything that you just read, and I could, pull some of it, and I understand, Walter Williams, and somebody made the comment that he's an economist. So that's his take on the data that he evaluated. I love economists. And I guess to get to an applications question, right? Because we're talking theoretical, and black men are problems and black families are the problems, and all of this other stuff. Like, I got to get the application. So if all of the data that you just reviewed and everything you read is wrong, and actually I'm bringing it home for you a little bit too, brother. And like, what are we supposed to do then, right? Because there's all of this, because we can do a lot of pontificating, but like, I know people who do a lot of talking in their hands do no action. But
right,
you know what I mean? And so that's the thing. Like, regardless of like, you look at the state of our community, and if take everything you say, CDC, apps to the back flam, I'll throw mass incarceration on top of that. One thing that happened after the 1970s was the war on drugs that led prisons from being 400,000 people to 6 million people being under the criminal justice system, and displacing a lot of black men from communities and families. So add that in there. So everything you talked about, add mass incarceration on top of it, add education on top of that, add the income on top of that. Like in our present day, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, this is like, we can have these conversations all day, but I can tell you, when I go into communities, right, that are currently impoverished, where people are on, federal assistance and all of this other stuff, all of this information that we pontificate about on the internet is not known to common people, right? Like, they're not reading they're not reading economists. They're not reading the impact of, even sometimes the impact of the civil rights and integration on black families and all of this other stuff. So I guess my thing, to kind of bring it around, and we talk about what to do, or what the Bible should do, regardless of how we feel and whether or not we agree on the state of the black family, and if it was systemic institutional racism, mass incarceration, or if it's a lack of responsibility, right? Fathers being absent in the household. The present state is the present state, right? And we spend all of this time arguing about how we got there. But again, I don't see many people talking about then how do we get the people out of these situations?
Number
right?
one,
You can't just reconcile everybody get married and the father be in the home like that child was already had out of wedlock. So from a policy and a process perspective, how do we try to drive better outcomes for people who are already in these scenarios, whether they landed there based on, you know, the information you just shared or because of a different circumstance?
I'm glad you mentioned that, bro, because I'm bringing it home too, and because we pretty much talked for a while. Bottom line, it's the gospel, it's the church. What does God call believers to do? Well, we know it's the Great Commission: go into all the world and preach the gospel. Now, it's one thing of preaching the gospel, but it's another thing to have the gospel practically applied in one's life. We see numerous examples of that, right? So we see how the early church did it in the book of Acts. We see how Paul and how he commended the Thessalonians and how when they received the gospel, it changed their lives. But in order for you to know where you are, we need to tell people where they are. They're lost. They need a savior. We don't need to pussyfoot around with that. We need to play it straight and real with them, right? So we don't tell them, hey, ma'am, sir, you know, you go to the hood, you know, we understand what you're going through, but it's the white man's problem. No, let's talk about how you got here. Just like Jesus did with the woman at the well, right? Yeah. He addressed the situation. He didn't talk about, you know, how these men, you know, were no good, and he wasn't male bashing, none of that kind. He didn't make no excuses. He dealt with her situation where she was and gave her the solution, right? So that's what we're called to do. We give people the gospel. So it's evangelism and then it's discipleship. Okay, it's sharing life with life. We can't act as though we love our brothers or love unbelievers, and then we're not working with them, or we're not showing them. And I believe that the church, for the most part, those who are actually doing the work of ministry, those who are actually, you know, preaching the gospel. First of all, it starts in our family. Let's just start there. Before you even go out, can we deal with Acts 1? Can we deal with Jerusalem? What's your Jerusalem, right? My Jerusalem is my family. It's the Woods family. Yeah. Then it's Judea, then it's Samaria, then it's the uttermost parts, right? So then I need to make sure that my home is tight. I got to make sure my home is intact, because what's the purpose of me trying to go out into somebody else's home if my home ain't right? So it's that. Once I do that, then I need to make sure that, hey, when I go out here, I hear people, I'm addressing issues, but from a biblical perspective. It has to be biblical. It can't be this social gospel. It can't be any of that mess. It has to be what the scriptures say. So now, holding them responsible, holding them accountable, all that comes with discipleship, but we have to get them the gospel first. So I believe that should actually answer the question, but we're seen to be pulling the cart before the horse. We want to basically just, you know, put a Band-Aid over the wound instead of cleaning it. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt to tell people, hey, look, you know, let's talk about these kids that you got. Let's talk about, you know, why aren't you working? Are you disabled? I mean, you see what I'm saying? I think that is where a lot of our communities within the hood and, you know, within our black people, we seem to want to soft shoe them. No. Take that same energy that you got when you're talking to white folk, bring that on home to our people. They need the truth too. So I didn't mean to rant, but that is what it is.
No, you good, man. And I love that, man, because, and I said it, matter of fact, I think we talked about it briefly before we jumped on the live, right? Like, you know, I'm staying out of the comments because I don't even want to know. I see the bubble. I see the bubble max out at 120 over here on so it's been a lot of talking. But I appreciate what you say, and what I want to add to it is this, right? Like we talked about earlier, like the church just can't be a soup kitchen. Right. But I think the problem is, like, even in my family, right? Because you said, you know, where your Jerusalem is. In my family, like, my wife does the instruction, right? I do the correction, right? Like, from a proper perspective. But then it's like when we go outside of our homes into these communities, right? Like, why can't you be doing everything that you say, but then somebody feeding them at the same time? And both of those can be, right? Like Jesus broke loaves and fishes, and he went and preached on the mountain. He didn't just, like, because remember, the disciples came to him, was like, the people said they're hungry. Jesus didn't tell them to shut up, tell them come get this word.
Right.
He said, feed them. Like, and then,
Right.
and then I'll still preach. And so I think, and so one of the things that I think that we do is that there are passions and there are things that God puts inside of us, right? That we're driven towards, that we're kind of designed and focused on discipling people in and building life and connecting with folks in. And then we tend to act like that's the only way that we should approach the issue, right? Like I agree with you. And I just met with, I met with the chief of police. I met with workforce development organizations because, my church, over my outreach, I'm doing food distribution, but I'm also opening up a legal clinic, right? So it's like trying to bring all these resources around because I don't want to just help you pay your rent. I want to make sure you don't have a slumlord. I want to make sure you ain't got a lease that's inappropriate, right? I want to make sure you're not living above your means. I don't want to just keep paying your light bill every month. But it takes different people to do that. You see what I'm saying? Like somebody to be the kind arm that can bring them in and can love on them and pray for them. But then you need somebody to be like, hey, all right, like that was twice.
Right.
Like what's going on with your budget? Let's get this together.
Right.
And what I find too often, especially working in like the nonprofit space, is that like we don't get that overlap in that body function, right? Where you might be the hand that's smacking some sense into somebody, and somebody else needs to be the hand that's giving them bread when they're hungry. But all of that is an effective, is an effective way to utilize the body. So like, but because we become divided on politics and ideology and even down to denominational lines, like I'm on a cross denominational. It's called the Guilford Congregational Alliance, and it's basically churches across like all denominations, but it's like a benevolence fund. So if somebody has a medical problem, like churches come together and try to help collectively, like as the body. But it's hard to get people to participate across denominations. So I say that to say, like, I don't disagree with your approach to anything. Right. Like, I think we need to have hard conversations. I have them. I've got mentees all over the country and they get that savage truth from me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what you doing with your money? What's going on with your life? Are you taking care of your family? You want to drop another album? You want to do a podcast? Like, are your bills paid? Are your credit card bills up to date? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's who I am. I'm a tough love kind of person. But my wife gift is exhortation and hospitality. Right? My wife will feed people. My wife will uplift people, right? And the way that our ministry works together is complementary. Yeah. So my thing is from the church, right? I also think the church needs to be preaching prejudice out of people, right? How, right? Like whether you black, white, Asian, right? Like the gospel, we're supposed to love each other, the Imago Dei, right? Having that appreciation for one another. Like, how do you have people who go to church every Sunday, but then go to work on Monday? And they're that teacher I talked about earlier. Like, you don't like black students, right? The video you played, my man was like, I love this theology, but he hated black people. I'm like, why are we not preaching that out of people at church? Or why are we not focusing on that Imago Dei? And
I got caught. I caught flack for that, but I didn't care, right?
Caught flack for what?
That video that I had dropped. I caught flack for that. I mean, I don't care because I believe in balance. I don't care if
I'm the same way, brother, and I respect that. You know what I'm saying? And so that's my thing. Like, I think we can even have these conversations, the discourse, and have the disagreement. But when it comes to the end of it, you know what I mean? Like, I honestly feel like you need people like me, and I need people like you. So at the end of the day, we trying to get the people the gospel. You know what I'm saying? But I know people who live in neighborhoods that are so loud they can't hear you talk. Right. So how do I get the volume down? Like, they can't hear you over these gunshots. Right. Like, let me go work with the police department and let's do some stuff in this community. Let's start a, what we're working on right now. Let's start a mentoring program and get all of these young men in the community involved with running so that they're not getting pulled into gangs and doing all that other stuff. But I need somebody to come in behind me and hit these dads in the head. I need somebody to come get these moms jobs. I need people to come in here and do skills training. But it's like we take this approach that like, okay, like everything that we do and that God puts in us is significant. Like, I talk about systemic racism. I talk about white supremacy. And I talk about that at research organizations that are global technology research companies where I got Fortune 500 CEOs admitting to the fact that they have discrimination at their companies. And they're like, well, what can we do about that? And I'm like, all right, how are you recruiting? What do your job descriptions say? What are your requirements? Where are you posting your job offerings, right? Like, there's things that we can do in that regard as well as a pastor, as a Christian, trying to make sure that people are affording opportunities and grace, man. But yeah, I agree with you saying. I do think the church needs to get out there, and I'm critical of it, right? Like that's the ministry that I'm over. And I'll tell you right now, it's easier for me to get somebody to come to a men's breakfast than it is for me to get men who are Christian, who are believers, and I go to a majority Black church to come out in the hood with me. You know who's out in the hood volunteering with me? A bunch of senior citizen women. So on our men's ministry call, I'm like, where y'all at? Where you at? Like, why I got 50, 60-year-old women walking around the most dangerous communities in Greensboro with me, but y'all want to complain about all these kids with their pants hanging down. And, you know, they ain't got no daddies. Okay, they ain't got no daddy. What you going to do about it? Are you going to go be their father? Right? Are you going to go be a good male role model? Are you going to go be a representative? Because if you're not, then shut up. Right? Like, stop complaining about problems you're not going to do nothing about. Like, if you're not in the communities and you want to sit there and we want to be pharisaical about people's life choices and their scenarios, like you used the woman at the well, right? Jesus came and said, look, I know what you've done. I know what you've been through. I know who you are. I know who you were with last night.
Right.
I still love you. And none of these people are perfect, so they can't throw a stone at you either. You know what I mean? So I think that we need more balance, but because of like stuff that's so polarizing, right? We got polarizing figures. We got polarizing organizations. You know, you played the clip, right? And I was like, you know, I said the thing about Black Lives Matter. I think Black Lives Matter is a polarizing organization, right? I know, like on their website, they want to destroy the nuclear family. Like it's on their about page. It's not a secret. Like you said, it's public information. So like not rocking with that. Like if any, you know, and I told, you know, my mentees or whatever, like, hey, if you had an event, go to events, go to prayer walks sponsored by churches, right? Like I went to several prayer tests, right, that were led by local congregations or groups of pastors that got together to pray for peace in our cities. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So you can be active and bring people together and have like a public showing of solidarity around an issue. And that's what you should have in the church, right? We shouldn't all just be hid. I always say we don't need to be light in the lighthouse, right? We're supposed to be a light to the world. Right. So you can't be afraid to go out. But the one thing I'll touch on in agreement with you, brother, is discipleship, right? Like that. I mean, honestly, that's why so many people in your comment section, you know what I'm saying? Because it's a bunch of people who go to church but ain't being discipled. So they got to come to YouTube and they come into your channel, my channel, and Ruslan's because they want somebody to talk to them, right? They want somebody to love them through where they are and where they're at. And we're missing that in church, man. And I think it got even worse throughout the last year with the pandemic of people not being able to physically go to church because we're not intentional. I mean, mind you, bro, like if we're not intentional about the people who already saved, like how are we supposed to be intentional about these lost folk we supposed to be finding? And I think that's the church's responsibility, right? Like we need to be discipling, and we also need to be encouraging people that the gifts that God gave you, right? The vision that God gave you, go out there. Like I encourage people to start their own nonprofits. Like, nope, not to start another ministry at your church and give your pastor something else to do. Go start your own nonprofit. Like if you want to educate young Black men I was talking to somebody in California the other day, wants to start a nonprofit organization to raise money to get more Black and Latino young men to become lawyers, right? Like go do it. Like what you waiting on? Like don't wait for your church to charter it or whatever else. Go do what you feel like God's called you to do, brother. And I will, you know what I'm saying? I will accept, on Candace Owen, you know what I mean? I will repent for calling her Auntie Ruckus. That was, you know what I mean? And I'm dead serious. Like that was libel of character. And I tell people that's why I don't do live streams because like I'm very sarcastic. So I've got that tendency, but I'll repent in that. That's not something she deserves. Like I said, there's a lot of work she's done before she kind of got into the politics that I respect. The discussion she's had at Congress, I respect. She's an intelligent woman. You know what I'm saying? I just didn't like the way that she was. To me, I felt like she was being platformed by the party to kind of cater to a particular audience. So
yeah, and I think that's respect. I think she probably won't ever watch our video, but that's fine. It's
like appreciate
that. But that's fine. I mean, but I believe it needed to be done for the body. You know what I'm saying? Because again, it's about influence. It's about the power that we do have. I mean, there's three institutions of power that God has established in this earth realm. One is the family, the other is the church, and the last is the state. And so when I hear this narrative of people talking about Black people don't have power, that's a lie. I mean, we do. You may be wanting more power than what God has sovereignly allowed you to, but but why don't you exercise that exousia in your home? You know what I'm saying? Exercise that power in your wife and your children, and then in the relationships that God has sovereignly and through his providence allowed you to engage. And I believe, here's how we change lives. We change it one soul at a time. So I'm not trying to get on any national platform. Now, if God calls me to do that, it's because he entrusts me with more. But whatever platform he gives me, I know it is a responsibility that I must take seriously, because I can have a greater weight of influence just doing what I'm doing here. So that's why I don't just say BCV because I want to have it on my head. I say BCV because it's my life. I want everything to be through the grid of book, chapter, verse. If it don't line up, then it needs to line out. I got to get it out of the way. And so I appreciate, man, us having this conversation. I really do. And I hope and pray that we can have more conversations like this, because I believe it's important. I believe that, we just scratched the surface on some of these things that we're discussing. But I think that it's good for two men, two brothers to be able to dialogue. Notice nobody disrespected each other. You know what I'm saying? We're men. We were able to share our points respectfully. And it's all love. So I definitely appreciate that, man. Let people know how they can reach out to you if you want to do that, bro.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, it's Pastor Roy Dockery on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Patreon as well. So I've seen some of my Patreons in the comment sections because I threw that out there to the community. But yeah, man, the same thing you said, BCV, it's savage truth for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to be honest, but to your point, if you're honest with yourself, it should always cut in both directions. Right. So if everything that I say is always critical of somebody else and it's not cutting me, then I'm not being that honest, because the distance between me and the perfection of Christ is vast. Right. And I'm always trying to pursue it to get closer to that. You know what I'm saying? So there's always something that I can be challenged on and that we should be convicted of as well. And that's what I push my team to do. But in my community, man. But yeah, man, I appreciate having the conversation. You know what I mean? Because I'm gonna tell you, people, I saw a couple comments and they were like, he ain't got no sources. I told you, I expected to have a conversation. I didn't know, next time I'll come with books. They're behind me, but I didn't have them bookmarked to have a discussion. So I do read a lot, but yeah, and it's, you know what I'm saying? I appreciate having the conversation, man. You know what I'm saying? It's all love. I love the way you had a conversation, and you know what I'm saying? Even bringing up my old Dear White Church video with my homegirl Cherie, but it's like you said, it's public, it's out there, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm honest, you know what I'm saying, in every opportunity that I can get. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So, and I'll tell you, I probably, just because I wasn't doing YouTube, if you would have found comments from me 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said black people can't be racist. You know what I'm saying? So it was 2018, 2019 that God gave me that conviction in my heart and brought that illustration right down, what is a system? And again, I like education. When he took it down to that classroom, I was like, oh, because when I was thinking systems, right? I studied mass incarceration and I'm thinking, prison system, the federal government, you know what I'm saying? Housing and lending and home appraisals, all of that stuff. But then when God put that in my heart down to that point, that's where we got to recalibrate at, you know what I'm saying? And so for me, I feel like there's a progression as well. I think we grow in our understanding, we grow in our grace, we grow in our, and we even grow in our positions, right? If you're not evolving or changing, then you're not challenging yourself and you're not following conviction, because we're not perfect. So we both done said something today that was from us and and you know what I'm saying, and not from God. So it's and we've got to be open to that, man. But much love to that. I don't know what the comments said, but much love to everybody in the comments that's still here. They've been talking.
I looked at a few of them. I didn't look at too much because I wanted to be focused on our conversation. I'll just say this real quick.
Still here at 9:37.
Look, man. Ruslan was all for this. You know what I'm saying? This was his moment, yo. This was his moment. I mean, he lived for this. But
he probably gonna call me when we get off the.
You think?
My phone been blowing up. So not only have I been ignoring I don't like Ruslan ain't text me, but a lot of my mentees have that are in the comments. But
I hope and pray, man. I hope and pray those that support you would be able to see that, you know, my motive and my intentions were pure. You know what I'm saying? This is how I get down. This is what I do. I don't try to, you know, come up with anything out of my head. If I say things, I want to back it up biblically, or I want to back it up with reliable, you know, proof. But ain't
nobody in my text messages coming at you. So just like you, ain't nobody coming for you in my.
I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I know I got some notifications on this joint, but look, I'm gonna put it through a grid first. I'm gonna put it through a grid.
Look, but no, I was like, I did text you. I was like, like I wasn't. I had my phones down. I took the comments off. And like you said, man, this is the first time we've talked. I haven't, you know, I didn't look. Appreciate you for giving me some AdSense, watching some throwback videos. But yeah, honestly, I did that on like I didn't want to come into the conversation with any perspective. You know what I'm saying? Like I wanted to, like we talked about before we went on live. Find it. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. So, you know what I'm saying? So I appreciate Ruslan, like he texted both of us. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, leave your comments. Let us know what you thought about this live. You know what I'm saying? Let us know what you thought about this live. Let us know of individuals that you would like for us to, you know, to cam up, particularly for me to cam up with. And I would love to have conversations with, you know, with you guys on your platform. Like I told Ruslan, you don't always have to come in my yard. I have no problem going into somebody else's yard. I ain't gonna jump over the fence though. You gotta open up the gate. Let me in. You know what I'm saying? I ain't trying to trespass. But you have that opportunity, man, for people. At least I try to give people opportunity, because again, we can text all we want, bro. And this is why this is just me, Roy. I believe having face-to-face or verbal discourse is better than doing it, you know, through text or through inbox. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't hear your heart, and I rather hear your heart than to assume it. And so that's why I tell people. Some people take it as intimidation. Look, man, I'm on the internet. What am I gonna do to you? Block you? That's the worst I'm gonna do to you is block you. I can't. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna pull up at your house. I ain't stupid. You know what I'm saying? So I just believe that these conversations are important. And so like I told Ruslan, and I'm putting Ruslan on notice right now. Everybody hear me. I've already told Ruslan that he needs, since he likes promoting stuff, Roy, since he likes promoting joints, you need to promote the conversation. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll. You need to promote the conversation between me and Alan Parr, the one that blocked me. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Roy, come on. Let's hey, listen, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. We men, right? It ain't like Alan don't know where I'm at. It ain't like he don't know how he can get with me. Let's get out of our fields. Let's get out of our fields. We men, and let's deal with the issue.
I ain't messing around with y'all. I don't know what y'all doing out here.
I know. Look, at least you are my witness that I've already said before all these peoples that, hey, I would like to have a public conversation with Alan Parr. Tell Alan Parr to unblock me. Get out of your feelings. Look, see Ruslan say, look, why ain't he coming on, Ruslan? Why ain't he coming on? So do I have to be Marcus Rogers? Do I gotta be Marcus Rogers for him to call me? Hey, friend, this is Alan Parr. Do I gotta? I mean, come on. Do what I gotta do for you to come up. Let's have a conversation. Let's call this game out. You know what I'm saying? So anyway,
and I just gotta say, like, and I'm gonna let you know, because you know, people seen a couple videos, like honestly, I don't do live videos, really, right? So like, I mean, just on a big up respect, for, you know what I mean. So it's been much love, but I typically I don't really do live videos. I rarely do them on my channel. But Saiko, I'm dead up, so I'm gonna hit up Jerome. Please. I'm gonna hit him up because he was just asking me about that. So and listen,
give him my number too, bro. Hey, listen, give him my number, give him my contact information. I would love to have a conversation with him. Invite him on my live. We can discuss it. You know, I did read his chapter in Urban Apologetics, and I liked it. And some people, I'll tell you this also. Some people took issue with me when I had promoted Jamar Tisby's The Color of Compromise. The only thing I had concern with was one of the chapters that he was talking about I think it was dealing with white guilt or whatever like that. But overall, the book it was on point. I enjoyed reading it. It was a good book, you know. And I think we as Christians, how can you exercise discernment if you don't know what to discern? You know what I'm saying? We need to be able to say, okay, look, I know there's certain people can't do what I do. So if you don't have the theological stomach or the theological palate to take a lot of the stuff that I have to deal with, and other people that do what I do, then I would not advise you to read this book over here. You know what I'm saying? It just you have to know what you can, what you can tolerate and what you can deal with. So
yeah. But anyway, I agree, man. You can't, we always, you got to know what to chew, what to spit out the bones. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, everything ain't for everybody. Like, I've got mentees in my Patreon community, but like, I won't recommend a book for them until I talk to them.
That's good.
Right. So like, I need to know where you at. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm not gonna tell you to go read.
You like around and have them turn to a JW or Mormon, like, oh, like, what? I read your book.
Like, the white man is the devil. Like, you can't let everybody read white fragility. Like, you can't. Like, they gonna come back. Black
they be singing Eddie Murphy. They be singing Eddie Murphy's "Kill the White People."
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man. But it was a good conversation. I'm kind of looking at the comments now, man, and I'm even seeing the love over there.
That's what's up, man.
And again, man, if my thing is, like, if we gonna have more conversations there, I got love for YouTube and I love sharing opinions, but I'm about action. So like,
absolutely,
let's talk about what we gonna do. Let's talk about how we gonna work in our communities, how we gonna serve people, how we gonna disciple people.
Yeah,
like all of that. That's my Patreon community. I call it my virtual congregation. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got calls. I talk to my people regularly because people need it. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of young people out there. I know Ruslan's got a community that pulls on him. I got people that pull on me. You got people that pull on you. I can see it from your Facebook comments, man. So we've got to, even if some of our ideas are different, you know what I'm saying? But I think they need to be, you know what I'm saying? Like, we were both in the military. We talked about it before. Like, you got. Yeah,
but he didn't go overseas, bro. Can y'all believe this? How you in the Navy? You don't get on the water. But anyway,
I didn't go nowhere and got the big checks. You know what I'm saying?
That's a disparity.
Because it ain't. Them bonus checks was definitely a disparity.
Yeah. But man, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you coming on, brother. And man, we're gonna have some more conversations. I think one conversation I want to have with you is about the church. I want to have a conversation about the church, about or church or politics, about how should Christians vote. I believe that the Bible speaks about that, but I think that we can pocket that and table that for a different discussion. And Ruslan can even moderate it, or he can have somebody he want to have me to come up with. I'll let him be the promoter. He's the Russian Don King. That's what he's gonna be. He's gonna be our Russian Don King. Armenian Don King. Thank you. Armenian Don King. Yeah. Only in America. But man, thank you, brother. And look forward to talking to you again, man, soon. We got each other's number and we'll stay connected, my brother.
All right, brother. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Take care of yourself, man. Blessings to you.
All right. Peace.
Grace and peace. All right, ladies and gentlemen. That's the live. Hopefully you all have been blessed and have been encouraged by it. And we were able to discuss things, I believe, respectfully, lovingly, straight up, honestly, and I think that this is what it should be about. And so, I'm definitely encouraged by it. I really am. This is what I enjoy doing. This is what I love doing. I believe that this is what will bring glory and honor to God in the platform that He has given to me. And so, again, I thank those of you who have supported this ministry. Again, some of you had asked again, what is my Cash App or PayPal information? I'll just put it up there again for you for those who want to know. First, again, here's my email address, SaikoWoods@yahoo.com. Share your thoughts about this video. Share your thoughts about the conversation that me and Pastor Roy had. You can do that either here through email, or you can hit me up on Twitter. You can do that through my DM on Twitter, or either through inbox on Facebook. Again, if you'd like to support ministry financially, you can do that through PayPal, SaikoWoods@yahoo.com. Please spell the name right, or I can't get it. Or you can do it also through Cash App, $SaikoWoods. You'd like to support the ministry through merchandise, you can do that through the Teespring link, teespring.com/stores/Saikos. That's with an S in that particular link, --store-number 2. So again, thank you all for your time. I really do appreciate it. Hope you all have a blessed Memorial Day. Thank you for the comments, even those that may not have agreed. Love you anyway. Thank you. That's how we grow. Iron sharpens iron. So I appreciate that. And so again, love you all. You have a great day. Prepare yourself for the Lord's Day. And y'all know the drill. Y'all know what we do. Whatever you do, do all to the glory and honor of God. God bless.